Chapter 6151. So the rumors are true. The dark attribute can really summon an army of skeletons to fight. Facing these skeletons, the crowd was not afraid at all. On the contrary, they couldn't help but feel excited. They had never known that the dark attribute could be so powerful, until they saw Baichen's strength. They also never knew that there were so many ways to use the dark attribute, especially its terrifying summoning power. In the past, they could only learn about it from ancient books. They even thought that it was so powerful that it didn't seem real. Only now, after seeing it with their own eyes, did they understand that it was all real. An unprecedented hope and expectation spread in the hearts of the crowd. They had been bullied for too many years. They hoped that one day, they could become a true powerhouse, and not have to bear the disgust and discrimination of others. The young master is simply too handsome. Such means are simply crazy. Even if I'm a man, I have to admit that the young master is really too handsome. Many cultivators were already injured. However, at this moment, everyone's heart was only filled with pride and endless longing for the future. Perhaps they could really win today. Even if the 5 major guilds didn't agree, their dark sacred assembly could still be established. What should we do? Luo Qinghao was completely dumbfounded. As his injuries worsened, he could no longer hold Di Yujue back. He had hoped that the battle would end soon, but he didn't expect that the original advantage would no longer exist. On the contrary, the opponent had gained an even greater advantage. With so many skeletons, he could sense that these skeletons were not weak. Once they joined the battle, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. I didn't expect this brat to have so many tricks up his sleeve. Feng Youxin's face was ashen. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. Last night, they had clearly discussed everything. However, they didn't expect so many changes to occur. Moreover, all of them were beyond their expectations. Facing so many skeletons, even she couldn't help but feel afraid, let alone ordinary cultivators. Once they charged, they might be able to leave safely. However, it would be impossible for the other cultivators. If they didn't have reinforcements, they might be completely annihilated here. Lei Ming, didn't you say that you sent people to look for help? Where are they? Feng Yuxian asked through voice transmission. Lei Ming's face was already extremely ugly. At this moment, when he heard Feng Youxian's question, his face became even uglier. I did send people to look for help. However, they haven't arrived yet. Then what should we do now? Yen Ye's voice was slightly deep, his face extremely solemn. Once this army of skeletons joined the battle, the situation on the battlefield, this was not something that could be done by stalling for time. In fact, under such circumstances, it was impossible for them to stall for time. As guild leaders, they might be able to block these skeletons, but what about the cultivators? They couldn't resist these attacks. Baichen, the number of skeletons you summoned this time is quite astonishing. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around with a smile. Now that she was facing these skeletons again, she no longer had the fear and worry she had before. On the contrary, there was a very warm feeling. Chapter 6152. If it were other cultivators, they wouldn't be able to find a stronger helper before their own strength reached a certain level. However, it was different for dark cultivators. The cultivation of the skeletons they summoned was linked to their strength when they were alive. Just like in the upper realm, many of the skeletons they summoned were powerful existences. With such helpers, the situation would change greatly. This was the biggest trump card they had prepared. This was because they rarely used it. Even if Nangong Yuqing and the others had seen it before, they wouldn't have thought that it would be on such a large scale. Even if the major guilds came to stop them, Emperor Cloud City was still the D family's territory. The number of cultivators they brought wouldn't exceed a certain range. Therefore, even in terms of numbers, they wouldn't be inferior in the slightest. Beichen's methods are really amazing. Lin Wenlan sighed with emotion, and a gratified smile appeared on his face. Even he couldn't help but be shocked by such methods. Kill without mercy. After the skeleton army arrived, Beichen suddenly shouted. His loud voice echoed throughout the square, and the determination contained in it made everyone's heart tremble. Beichen, are you going to fight all the guilds to the end? Lei Ming's face was gloomy. With the appearance of the skeleton army, he keenly noticed that many cultivators' faces had become pale and nervous. They even vaguely had the idea of escaping. No matter what, he absolutely couldn't let this happen. He knew very well that in such a situation, once the first cultivator left, the other cultivators would follow closely behind and leave. At that time, they would be utterly defeated. If only the 5 of them were left here, it would be a real joke. Listening to Lei Ming's words, Di Beichen couldn't help but laugh. Lei Ming, are you joking? It's obviously you who have been targeting us and trying to kill us. Now you're saying the opposite. Could it be that after becoming a guild leader, your face has become thicker than the city walls? In the face of Di Beichen's merciless mockery, Lei Ming was extremely unhappy, but in the face of the current situation, he had to think of something. As long as their reinforcements arrived, they might still have a chance to turn the situation around. Di Beichen about this attack. Without waiting for Lei Ming to speak, Di Beichen had already interrupted his words. After the previous interaction, he already understood that this so-called President Lei was a completely shameless person. The change in attitude now was only because they were at a disadvantage. He didn't want this matter to become even more complicated. From the moment Lei Ming said that he wanted to kill all darkness attribute cultivators, they had already decided that they would not rest until one of them was dead. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with admiration as she looked at his unswerving determination. They were responsible for the lives of the dark attribute cultivators, and they had to eliminate all unstable factors. Ouyang Jifeng also gave him an affirmative look. This guy is really cool when he's decisive. The skeleton army joined the battle. Under Di Beichen's guidance, they charged towards the cultivators from the guilds. These skeletons still retained the battle consciousness they had when they were alive. Even if they had fallen, their battle prowess was extremely terrifying. Kill, kill, kill. Chapter 6153. As far as the eye could see, there were skeletons everywhere. The dark sacred assembly was completely surrounded by an army of skeletons. Not only that, but everyone could also hear the footsteps in the distance. Obviously, more skeletons were rushing over. The spectating cultivators felt their scalps tingle when they saw the army of skeletons. When they encountered the army of skeletons in the past, they already felt that the number of skeletons was astonishing. But compared to the scene before them, it was nothing. Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but shrink his neck. He felt that it wasn't easy for him to stay alive after offending Di Beichen for so long. He decided that he would never offend Di Beichen in the future. Otherwise, he wouldn't be a match for him at all just based on his perverted methods. What's more, Di Beichen still had Bailey Hongzhuang by his side. Even President Lei couldn't do anything to her. Wouldn't he be courting death if he went to look for trouble? It wasn't just Nangong Yuqing. All the young cultivators present had the same thought in their minds. Everyone was around the same age. How could Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang be so abnormal? Blood mist filled the sky. The previous scene of the dark cultivators being chased had been completely reversed. On the contrary, the cultivators of the 5 major unions were being chased. The strong smell of blood spread in the air. The army of skeletons unconditionally obeyed Di Beichen's orders. In their eyes, Di Beichen was the supreme king. Huang Futing and the others heaved a sigh of relief. Without the pressure of being pursued, they could be considered to be at ease at this moment. The 5 major union leaders didn't expect that they would have so many helpers. Even if they brought a lot of cultivators this time, it was obviously not enough in front of the endless skeletons. Previously, he had been very worried. He didn't expect the young master to have such a big killer move and reverse everything. As cultivators fell one after another, the dark cultivators didn't have the slightest bit of sympathy. This was because if the situation hadn't changed, they would be the ones being slaughtered. Previously, in just a few short breaths, many of their cultivators had fallen. Right now, he was merely seeking revenge. After all, this hatred had been piled up on them by cultivators of other attributes from the very beginning. They had never taken the initiative to hate the other party, but the other party was not willing to give them a way out. So they could only follow the young master and fight their way out. At this moment, As they looked at the two celestial-like figures, there was only worship left in their hearts. When the endless skeletons had appeared, the cultivators from the 5 major guilds had already turned pale. After exchanging blows and understanding the strength of these skeletons, their faces had turned deathly pale. Too strong. Altogether, these skeletons were even stronger than some dark attribute cultivators. The scariest thing was that these skeletons didn't know the concept of exhaustion, nor were they injured. On the contrary, the injuries on their bodies continued to worsen, and they were unable to display their original strength due to fear. Originally, they had thought that they would be able to slaughter their way through the guild's forces and obtain the guild's rewards when they returned. Never had they imagined that the situation would be completely different from what they had imagined. Chapter 6154. President, what should we do now? President, you have to save us. Otherwise, we'll all die here. The group of cultivators desperately resisted the attacks of the skeletons, and at the same time, looked at the 5 presidents for help. If they did not think of a way to stop these skeletons, they would all be annihilated. By then, forget about obtaining benefits, they would even lose their lives. However, when they turned around, everyone realized that the 5 presidents could not even protect themselves at this moment, and their hearts instantly turned cold. When Lei Ming and the others heard the cultivators begging for mercy, they were also extremely anxious. However, in the current situation, they could not even take care of themselves. It was too difficult to stop Di Beichen, unless they agreed to let Di Beichen establish the Dark Sacred Assembly. However, in this way, the reputation of the 5 guild leaders would be completely lost. After all, they had tried their best to stop him in front of everyone, and did not leave any room for negotiation at all. They even threatened to kill all the darkness attribute cultivators. Now that they were no match for him, they changed their stance. Moreover, they did it in front of so many forces. Wasn't this a slap to their own faces? After today, how would they have the face to face others? Di Yujue was in a good mood now. He was no longer as anxious as before, and he was not in a hurry to leave. He also began to teach Luo Qinghao a lesson with great interest. Hasn't this guy been pestering me, and not letting me take the opportunity to leave? Now, I'll deal with him calmly. After noticing Di Yujue's expression, how could Luo Qinghao not understand what he was thinking? He instantly felt even more depressed. Today was simply a hellish day. Not to mention the cultivators who were fighting the skeletons. Even he could not protect himself. If this continued, his life would be in Di Beichen's hands. Junhong Chung and Xiao Yanlong's feelings at this moment were as if a bottle of mixed feelings had been knocked over. Most of it was frustration and despair that came from the bottom of their hearts. Today was clearly an opportunity to change everything. But for some reason, the situation had changed again. Not only them, even the 5 guild leaders would be defeated by the Di family. At this moment, they felt as if God had been helping the Di family. Ever since Di Beichen appeared, it was as if God had been helping them. They thought that they had the upper hand, but God gave the Di family and the Lin family an even bigger advantage. This feeling was like a cooked duck flying away. Every time they were happy for a moment, they would receive a cruel blow. This feeling was even more despairing than the initial disappointment. It was precisely because of this that they fell into a predicament step by step. But thinking about it carefully, their calculations were not wrong. It was just that the other party was more skilled. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were still working together to think of a way to resist Xiao Yanlong and Junhong Chung. However, ever since the appearance of the skeleton army, they had also escaped from that situation. Looking at the skeleton who was fighting with Xiao Yanlong, Xiao He could not help but sigh. Master, this skeleton was really a first-class powerhouse when he was alive. According to their understanding, after a cultivator had fallen, the skeleton would still have a certain amount of strength and fighting instincts, but it would still degenerate compared to when he was alive. However, the degenerated skeleton could still fight on par with them. This showed how powerful he was. Chapter 6155. The strong smell of blood spread in the air. and the entire dark sacred assembly was dyed red with blood. Bang! Luo Qinghao's figure flew out and fell into the skeletons. He was instantly surrounded by skeletons. Di Yujue glanced coldly at Luo Qinghao, then landed in front of Jun Hongcheng. His handsome face was filled with indifference, and his pair of black eyes seemed to have frost that couldn't be melted. Jun Hongcheng, your plan seems to have failed again, and you've implicated many of the family's cultivators. With his familiarity with the Jun family, he had already seen the cultivators of the Jun family and the Xiao family in the guild's team. These two guys were worried about the one-year agreement, so they wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to deal a heavy blow to them. Jun Hongcheng's face was ashen, looking at the face in front of him that was younger than him. All the unwillingness in his heart exploded. Over the years, he had schemed and schemed to defeat the Di family. Later, he indeed formed an alliance with the Xiao family. However, he never thought that the final result would be that the two families would be defeated by the other party, even after joining forces. How ironic was that? Di Yujue, don't be too arrogant, Jun Hongcheng said coldly. Di Yujue chuckled. You've always been the one who planned step by step, but in the end, this is the result. If I kill you today, what do you think will happen to the Jun family's future? As soon as these words came out, Jun Hongcheng's eyes narrowed, but he saw the strong killing intent in the latter's eyes. Even the last time they met, he had never seen Di Yujue with such strong killing intent. It seemed that this time, he was really determined to make a move against the Jun family. A trace of fear inexplicably appeared in his heart. It had nothing to do with his life or death, but they were already at a disadvantage today. Once the dark sacred assembly was successfully established, the Di family's strength would increase again, and it would be easy to destroy them. Moreover, with so many skeletons, once they rushed into the Jun family's residence, coupled with the power of the Di family, they wouldn't be able to resist at all. His heart turned cold at this moment. He began to regret everything he had done in the past. If his family was exterminated because of his decision, then he would be a great sinner of the Jun family. Don't forget that the secret key is still in my hands, Jun Hongcheng said coldly. Right now, his only bargaining chip was the secret key. Even if the Land of Heritage can never be opened without the secret key, so what? Di Yujue's expression was calm. The Land of Heritage was indeed very important to them. It would be best if they could open it, but if they couldn't, the status of the Di family would not be affected. Anyway, the Land of Heritage had not been opened for so many years, and the life of the Di family was not affected in any way. Jun Hongcheng's expression froze, but he didn't know what to say. Di Yujue's words were indeed reasonable. No matter how one looked at it, he was destined to be the loser. When Lei Ming rescued Luo Qinghao from the group of skeletons, Luo Qinghao's body was already in a mess, and he didn't have the slightest image to speak of. His clothes were dyed red with blood, and there were countless wounds of various sizes. The skeletons didn't show any mercy, and some of the hideous and terrifying wounds even made one's heart tremble. Luo Qinghao's face was extremely pale. If Lei Ming had been one step slower, his life would have been completely lost here. President Lei, we can't continue like this, or else all of us will die here. Chapter 6156. Although the situation of Feng Yuxian and the others was slightly better than Luo Qinghao's, it was not much better. Everyone, who had already begun to retreat, wanted to end everything even more after hearing this. There were still some cultivators fighting against the skeletons. However, judging from the situation, as long as Di Baichen was not willing to stop, these cultivators would be wiped out sooner or later. By then, the skeletons would be surrounding them. Moreover, Di Linxian and the others were not weak. They had already used all their skills to deal with them, but they were still unable to keep them in check. As for Luo Qinghao, his opponent Di Yujue was already terrifyingly strong. Since he was already seriously injured, no matter if he stayed in the group of skeletons or continued to face Di Yujue, only death awaited him. If Di Yujue had not shifted his attention to Jun Hongcheng, Luo Qinghao might have already died. Lei Ming, we can't go on like this. Feng Yuxian also said. She was already regretting it to the extreme. If she had known that this would happen, she would have either brought more people or not objected at all. It would be a pity to lose her life for the sake of the guild. Lei Ming looked at the wavering crowd. In fact, his heart had already begun to waver the moment the skeleton army appeared. In the face of such a terrifying force, the few of them were clearly too weak. However, he could not say such a thing. His pride did not allow him to do so. In my opinion, Di Beichen's means are so strong that it's inevitable for him to rise. If he wants to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly, it's useless even if we stop him. Even if he gives up on establishing the Dark Sacred Assembly on the surface and develops it into an underground force, wouldn't it be more terrifying? Yin Ye's expression was solemn. He had never thought of this possibility before. However, after seeing the cultivators' fanatical worship for Di Beichen, he figured it out. If the Dark Sacred Assembly was established, they could still control it more and use the regulations that the major guilds had to follow. However, once the other party developed into an underground force, all the restrictions would be useless. If that was the case, it would only be more terrifying. Lei Ming and the rest had not thought of this point. After hearing Yin Ye's words, they could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. Indeed, compared to establishing the Dark Sacred Assembly, this was a more terrifying outcome. In that case, everyone has the same idea? Thunder's gaze swept across the other 4 guild leaders. After seeing the 4 of them nod in agreement, he confirmed his answer. I understand. Lei Ming sighed faintly. His original imposing manner instantly became dispirited. He had been smart all his life, but he never thought that he would lose his dignity in front of a junior today. However, he had no way to change all of this. He was the one who initiated this matter. Now that he had chosen to give up, it was only natural that he would take the lead. Even if it was embarrassing, for the sake of everyone's lives, he had no other choice. Ying Ming, it seems that your judgment is correct. When Chu Yifeng saw the ugly expressions of the 5 guild leaders, he could already guess their decision. He could not help but inwardly sigh. It seemed that his son had really grown up. Whether it was in terms of foresight or boldness, he was stronger than him in these matters. Chapter 6157. President, they're planning to change their minds. Chu Yingming's voice was calm. This result was not beyond his expectations. From the very beginning, he felt that Di Beichen would win. Although they were young, they were actually very meticulous. Before they did anything, they had already made detailed plans. The head of the Di family had always been a highly respected figure. His wisdom and methods were outstanding even among all the family heads. He was willing to support Di Beichen because he felt that this matter had a chance of success. If I'm not wrong, they're already thinking of retreating. Chu Yifeng sighed. I shouldn't have stopped you. Previously, when Chu Yingming proposed to help the Di family, Chu Yifeng thought about it again and again, and decided not to take the risk. This was because if the Di family failed, their Chu family would also have to pay a huge price. He didn't think that the result would be the same as what Chu Yingming had predicted. They also lost a great opportunity to befriend the Di family. If they missed this opportunity, it would be even more difficult to befriend them in the future. Thinking of this, Chu Yifeng couldn't help but envy the Jiang family and Morong family. Their families also had 2 good sons. Although this decision was very risky, if they won, their future gains would definitely not be small. With the Di family's temperament, after this matter was over, the Jiang family and Morong family would become their best allies. With the friendship of the younger generation, their relationship would become even stronger. Lei Ming pondered for a moment before looking at Di Beichen. His ugly face revealed an awkward expression. Di Beichen, in my opinion, we should reconsider this matter. Bracing himself to say this, Lei Ming felt as if all the strength in his body had disappeared. Even if Lei Ming didn't say it clearly, everyone present understood that he was admitting defeat. Nangong Yu's hand trembled. Sure enough, this kind of scene still happened. From now on, no one in the younger generation would be able to compare to Di Beichen. Following Lei Ming's words, Di Beichen, Bailey Hongzhuang, Ouyang Jifeng, and Mo Yunjue's eyes slightly changed. They all had different thoughts in their minds. Di Baichen chuckled and looked at Lei Ming with ridicule. President Lei, what do you mean by reconsidering? This guy isn't our opponent right now, so he wants to reconsider. Why didn't I hear him say that before? Xiao He didn't mind the anger on his face. Previously, they had always been respectful to the various guild leaders. However, they had been pressuring them step by step, not giving them any room to breathe. If they were the ones at a disadvantage, then Lei Ming and the others would have killed them all without hesitation. President Lei Ming, isn't this shameless? From the moment he put on that face, it was already obvious. Xiaobai shrugged. Although the 5 presidents were all enemies, it was clear that President Lei was the most annoying. Lei Ming originally thought that Di Baichen would happily end all of this after he said those words. He never thought that Di Baichen still felt that he wasn't clear enough, and purposely made him say it clearly. Wasn't this just to embarrass him in front of everyone, and make him unable to raise his head again? How despicable. Lei Ming clenched his fists and gritted his teeth as he looked at Di Baichen. He felt as if he was going to go crazy from anger. Chapter 6158. What I mean is that we no longer object to your establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Lei Ming took a deep breath and gritted his teeth as he uttered the words that made him feel extremely humiliated. Recalling his resolute rebuttal earlier, this was simply a slap in the face. It was not just Lei Ming. Even Feng Yuxian and the others, who had strongly urged Lei Ming to change his words, felt humiliated. They were guild leaders after all, and were well-known figures in the upper realm. However, what they had done today was truly unsightly. After today, this matter would probably become a stain in their lives. Who knew how many people would laugh at them? As soon as these words were spoken, Huang Futing and the other dark attribute cultivators' faces lit up with excitement. Heavens, they've agreed to let us establish the Dark Sacred Assembly. This means that we don't have to lower our heads in the future. In the future, we can openly state our attributes. Isn't this all because of the young master? If the young master hadn't used such a trick, they wouldn't have changed their words at all. Everyone knew very well that Lei Ming and the others had been forced to change their words because they could not resolve the situation before them. However, at the same time, this was also the rule that everyone understood. In this world, the rules were set by the strong. As long as one was strong enough, no matter how absurd the things one wanted to do were in the eyes of others, one would be able to succeed. Everyone present could not help but feel shocked. From today onwards, the structure of the upper realm would really change. In the past, everyone had always looked down on dark attribute cultivators. However, after witnessing Di Baichen's methods today, no one dared to look down on him so easily. This was because such methods were simply too difficult to deal with. Di Linxian and the others looked at Di Baichen with joy. Although the process today had been very tortuous, the final result was still very good. However, just as everyone thought that the battle was completely over, Di Baichen's words shocked everyone. How can I believe the words of a person who goes back on his words like you? Di Baichen's expression was cold. Even though they had only interacted for a short period of time, he had already understood that this President Lei was not the upright gentleman that everyone thought him to be. On the contrary, he was narrow-minded. Making such a decision at this moment was only because they were forced to do so. If they were allowed to leave peacefully like this today, no one knew what the final outcome would be. Earlier, Lei Ming had said that he wanted to kill all darkness attribute cultivators. Now, he had changed his mind and agreed to the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly? What if this guy went back and said that he was forced to say such words, and took the opportunity to attack the Dark Sacred Assembly again? Wouldn't that be terrible? Anyway, for those who had already lost face, losing face again was not important to them at all. Lei Ming's mood was already extremely bad. When he heard Di Baichen's sarcastic words, he suddenly felt his blood boil. He was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. It was already good enough that he agreed. What else did Di Baichen want him to do? Could it be that he wanted him to swear in front of so many people? Luo Qinghao and the others' faces alternated between green and red. Their emotions were extremely complicated. However, Di Beichen's words were not without reason. They had no way to refute him. Chapter 6159. Di Beichen. Lei Ming's tone became heavier, mixed with thick anger, but he forcibly suppressed it. I've already said so much. What else do you want? What else do I want? Di Beichen sneered, his expression indifferent. From the beginning to the end, I should be the one asking you what you want, right? Is it great that you've said so much? I've said so much before, in the face of so many people's pleas. Didn't you completely ignore them? You used your selfish words to shut all of us up. The reason is that you're stronger. Now, Di Beichen's voice was loud and domineering. We're stronger than you. Why should we listen to you? The one who should shut up is you. It's you. A cold shout filled with an aura caused Lei Ming to be stunned on the spot. What did it mean to shoot yourself in the foot? This was it. At this moment, Lei Ming was about to die of anger. As an elder, it was normal for him to preach, but Di Beichen used these words at this moment to counter him, making him unable to refute. Chapter 6160. Even if the Dark Sacred Assembly was successfully established, the fact that Di Beichen had become the president would be criticized by others. It would always be talked about, and there was no way to change it. Didn't you plan to kill us all? Di Beichen was extremely cold. His dark eyes were bottomless, as if they contained endless coldness, causing people's hearts to palpitate. Killing all the dark attribute cultivators, destroying my family and killing my friends, wasn't that your plan? Di Beichen spread out his hands, indicating to the cultivators behind him. You can do the same thing to us, but you think that we can't do it. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with disgust. Now she really hated these people's hypocritical faces. They looked high and mighty, as if they were superior to others. Other people's lives were like ants in their eyes, but their own lives were incomparably noble. Wasn't that ridiculous? Feng Yuxian was silent. She suddenly understood why Di Beichen was so persistent. It was not only for her, but also for his family, friends, and all the dark attribute cultivators who believed in him. He was seeking justice for everyone, because if he agreed so easily, he would not be able to face these people who risked their lives to help him. Feng Yuxian's feelings were extremely complicated. This kind of responsibility was hard to find even in many older people, but she found it in Di Beichen. Even if she was very dissatisfied with everything Di Beichen had done, she had to admit that he was indeed a very outstanding young man. The reason why so many people were willing to lose their lives for him was probably because he treated them with sincerity. The 5 presidents did not say anything else. Faced with Di Beichen's resolute attitude, they knew very well that no matter what they said, it was useless. Today they could only fight to the end. The sounds of killing filled the sky, and the surroundings of the Dark Sacred Assembly had become a terrifying battlefield. Blood spurted out, and miserable screams were endless. However, from the beginning to the end, those skeletons did not harm any of the cultivators who came to watch the battle. In the beginning, everyone was a little worried when they saw those skeletons appear. Once they were surrounded by those skeletons, even if they wanted to escape, it would be very difficult. Fortunately, these skeletons did not treat them as targets and did not attack them. While everyone was impressed by Di Beichen's ability to distinguish between kindness and hatred, they were even more shocked by his ability to control the skeleton army. These skeletons didn't seem to be dead at all. Instead, they seemed to be real humans who obeyed Di Beichen's orders. Lei Ming and the others had no choice but to continue fighting after failing to communicate. However, their hearts were filled with despair. If this continued, they might really lose their lives here. Ta-ta-ta. At this moment, a series of footsteps sounded from behind. Hearing the footsteps, Lei Ming's eyes lit up, and a strong sense of hope appeared in his eyes. Now that the skeleton army had arrived, there was only one possibility for the cultivators to arrive: reinforcements. It must be their reinforcements. Luo Qinghao was also shocked. Regardless of how useful these reinforcements would be, it would be good as long as they could get some help. Just as Lei Ming and the others had guessed, a group of reinforcements had arrived. Everyone's footsteps were firm, and victory was written all over their faces. Chapter 61-61. When the reinforcements arrived, they did not immediately see the 5 guild leaders. The first thing they saw was a horde of ferocious skeletons. The skeletons at the back turned around when they heard the footsteps behind them. They raised their weapons and were obviously preparing for battle. The reinforcements, who originally wanted to perform well today, were completely dumbfounded when they saw this scene. Could it be that they came here today to deal with skeletons? What kind of joke was this? There were skeletons everywhere. They simply did not have enough people. Looking at the orderly skeleton army staring coldly at them, everyone could not help but feel a chill in their hearts. Normally, these skeletons were the last thing they wanted to meet, okay? Am I seeing things? A cultivator said in a daze. His tone was filled with uncertainty. Didn't they say they were going to deal with dark attribute cultivators? Could they be skeletons? The leader was completely dumbfounded. When he left earlier, he did not know that there were so many skeletons here. Based on this situation, it was obvious that the guild leader and the rest were completely surrounded by skeletons. My stomach hurts. I'm in a bad state. I'm afraid I can't help today. I'm really sorry. I'll make a move first. I wouldn't have felt it if you didn't say it. Now that you mention it, my stomach hurts too. I must have eaten something bad during lunch. I can't fight in this state. I'll make a move first. After the first cultivator found an excuse to run away, the other cultivators also found an excuse to run away. Continue to stay here? Unless they were stupid. With so many skeletons around, the moment they entered, they would definitely die. Moreover, according to their judgment, the guild members must have been surrounded. They could not escape even if they wanted to. If they rushed in, they would be courting death. Just as Thunder turned around and was about to summon a group of cultivators to help, he realized that the cultivators had run away as soon as they arrived. They ran away. Thunder was stunned. Why did they run away when they had just arrived? The sudden scene was beyond everyone's expectations. However, the scene of them running away like birds and beasts made them laugh uncontrollably. These guys are not stupid. They knew the current situation and ran away as soon as they could. Actually, under such circumstances, even if rushing in can temporarily alleviate the situation, the end result is still death. 5 guild leaders, you've truly made the wrong decision today. Even if you don't lose your lives here today, you'll still lose all your face. The faces of Yin Yi and the others turned ashen as they felt a burning pain on their faces. It's all over now. Luo Qinghao's expression was dull, and his eyes were filled with despair. If there was a medicine for regret in this world, he definitely wouldn't have appeared here today. It was no wonder that Chairman Lu had agreed to this matter. Perhaps Chairman Lu had already known all of their methods and knew that this matter was unstoppable. That was why he had agreed on the first day. In fact, even if they were in other places, it would be very difficult for them to deal with such methods, let alone in Emperor Cloud City. More and more cultivators died, and even Thunder was injured. Let alone them, the cultivators from other guilds were the ones who had truly broken down. Chapter 61-62. Blood splattered everywhere, and a familiar scream was heard. Everyone turned to look and realized that guild leader Luo had died at the hands of a skeleton. His eyes were wide open, and his face was filled with fear and disbelief. It seemed that he did not expect to die here today. Guild leader Luo, Feng Yuxian exclaimed, even though she was exhausted from dealing with the situation and realized that she might end up in a miserable state. She did not believe that she would die here. Only when Luo Qinghao died in front of her did she realize that death was really close. Di Beichen's determination was really terrifying. Because of their previous attitude, Di Beichen also had the same intention of killing them. Yin Yi and the others were completely dumbfounded, and their hearts were in turmoil. Originally, Luo Qinghao had already been severely injured after his battle with Di Yujue. Coupled with the fact that they were unable to split themselves up, there was no way for them to help him. Who would have thought that the extremely weak Luo Qinghao would die at the hands of the skeleton just like that? For a moment, everyone's hearts were in chaos. When the guild's cultivators who were still alive saw that their guild leader had fallen, the last string in their hearts was completely pulled taut. I don't want to stay here. I want to leave. Only death awaits me if I stay here. The cultivators fled as if they were possessed. They were all going to die, but perhaps there was a chance of survival if they fled. In an instant, the group scattered like scattered sand. Everyone wanted to run for their lives, and the despair that came from the bottom of their hearts made them feel like they were about to collapse. Apart from that, some cultivators even knelt down and begged Di Baichen for mercy. Young Master Di, I beg you, if you give me a way out, I will never do such a thing again. I swear, as long as I can live, I will leave the guild and have nothing to do with it anymore. At that moment, everyone was in tears. This was the worst decision they had ever made. Even if there was a risk of losing their lives during the training, the scene before them had destroyed all their hopes bit by bit, causing them to lose their confidence. Everything in front of them was dark and gloomy. Fear was magnified infinitely. The feeling of watching death getting closer and closer was the real torture. However, they did not have the courage to die. In such a dilemma, they were going crazy. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at the scene before her. In fact, these cultivators did not have any enmity with them. It was just that they had different standpoints. In the face of such begging, they didn't feel good either. At that moment, Bai Li Yanche whispered a few words to her. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes turned slightly, and she nodded slightly understanding. No one noticed this scene, but everyone noticed that the giant beast summoned by Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly went crazy and attacked Lei Ming. Lei Ming's strength was originally on par with this giant beast, and neither could do anything to the other. However, after so many things had happened, his mind had long been in a mess. Luo Qinghao's death had given him too much of a shock. Coupled with these hysterical cultivators, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Most of them were thinking about how to get out of this predicament. Chapter 61-63. That enormous force seemed to have shifted his internal organs, and a few of his ribs were broken. His entire body felt like it was falling apart, as he fell heavily to the ground. Bang! Lei Ming's figure fell into the group of skeletons. These skeletons did not show any mercy, and their attacks were ruthless. Lei Ming only felt that he had not even had the chance to catch his breath when countless fists came flying towards him. Bang, bang, bang. It was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. Even the famous President Lei was somewhat exhausted at this moment. Save me! Lei Ming shouted. If he could not escape now, he was afraid that he would follow in Luo Qinghao's footsteps. The Earth Elemental President, Hu Heipo, was the closest to Lei Ming. After seeing that Lei Ming was seriously injured, he quickly rushed to his side. The elemental energy in his body surged out, and the tyrannical force was like a gust of wind, directly blowing away the skeletons around Lei Ming. Seeing this, the badly battered Lei Ming heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, he had a chance to catch his breath. However, at this moment, Feng Youxian's extremely sharp voice suddenly rang out. President Lei, be careful! Lei Ming was slightly startled. Before he could understand what Feng Youxian meant, he saw a huge mountain flying towards him. His eyes widened, and his body seemed to have lost control at this moment. He could only stare blankly at the scene in front of him, as if he did not dare to believe that all this was real. Hu Heipo had wanted to save Lei Ming, but after hearing Feng Youxian's reminder, he turned his eyes to the side. He saw the terrifying giant beast charging towards him like a thunderbolt. Its mountain-like body was extremely terrifying. Even though he had dodged at the first moment, he was still sent flying by the impact. At the moment of impact, he felt as if he had been crushed by a ferocious beast, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Such terrifying strength was simply shocking. They were simply no match for such a huge beast. Everyone present stared blankly at this scene. The giant beast's move was simply too shocking. President who had only been hit once, and he had already become like this. Then, what would President Lei look like after being crushed by the mountain? A question mark. Everyone's mind was filled with a question mark. They didn't even dare to think about that tragic scene. If they hadn't guessed wrongly, The chances of President Lei surviving in such an environment were too slim. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw this, she breathed a sigh of relief, and her whole body relaxed. Among the 5 presidents, Lei Ming and Luo Qinghao were the ones who objected the most. Therefore, no matter what, these 2 presidents had to be dealt with. Only with the death of these 2 guild leaders would the rest of the matter become easier. Otherwise, these 2 fellows would definitely become a threat in the future. At the same time, Di Beichen also let the cultivators who were begging for mercy go. To put it bluntly, these people were just pawns being used from the beginning to the end. Just by looking at the way they were crying, it was easy to guess that they wouldn't dare to go against them in the future. The people who begged for mercy did not expect Di Beichen to really agree. They were just really broken down and wanted to find a way to vent their emotions. In that endless fear, they felt worse than death. When Di Beichen let them go, they immediately felt grateful to Di Beichen. Chapter 61-64. Just as the crowd was wondering what President Lei would look like under the gigantic beast, the mysterious door beneath Bailey Hongzhuang's feet reappeared once again. The gigantic beast slowly walked back after seeing the mysterious door. It looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes full of admiration and respect. However, as the gigantic beast slowly left, the crowd finally saw the real situation clearly. With one look, everyone's hearts couldn't help but tremble. President Lei's figure was nowhere to be seen. All that was left was a pile of flesh and blood. Rumble. The mysterious door closed, and the gigantic beast disappeared from the crowd's sight. Everyone was dazed for a moment as they stared at the mysterious door, which had completely disappeared. It was as if that ferocious and terrifying gigantic beast had never appeared in the first place. The crowd was filled with fear as they stared at the enchanting and proud figure. This was the first time they had seen such a technique. This woman was simply a mysterious and terrifying existence. Even the leaders of the various organizations did not dare to underestimate Bailey Hongzhuang, because no one knew how many gigantic beasts she could summon. In addition to the Beast King and the Dragon Clan, this woman's techniques were already terrifying enough to send chills down their spines. At the same time, Di Beichen was also a man with shocking potential and extremely terrifying potential. The union between these two could be said to be a match made in heaven. However, this was a complete disaster to the rest of the crowd. Initially, it would be a good thing to have a clear understanding of the Di family's true power. Everyone would be able to make a rough estimate of their power after seeing their trump cards. However, after having a true understanding of their power, everyone gave up on the thought of going against them. That would really be digging their own graves. Hongzhuang, what's that gigantic beast's name? This is the first time I've seen you summon it. Shangguan Yingying stared curiously at Bailey Hongzhuang. Every time Bailey Hongzhuang summoned a gigantic beast, she could not recognize it. It was very interesting. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head in response to Shangguan Yingying's question. Actually, I don't know either. As she gradually became more proficient in her summoning technique, she realized that she could not only summon the demonic beasts that she had seen before. However, every time she tried to summon a beast, she would succeed as long as she thought about the characteristics of the beast she wanted to summon. The only thing that didn't change was that the stronger the demonic beast he summoned, the more mental energy he needed to summon it. She was now able to summon many demonic beasts with the same cultivation level as her. But today's battle clearly required more powerful demonic beasts, so she tried her best to summon such a big fellow. Reality proved that the effect was very good. You don't know either? Shangguan Yingying was slightly stunned. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded with a helpless smile. It doesn't matter what species it is, as long as it's strong enough. That makes sense. Di Beichen quietly turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang. He had also noticed the private conversation between Bai Lianche and Bailey Hongzhuang. After this conversation, Hongzhuang had quickly taken care of President Lei. There must be some connection between them. Noticing Di Beichen's gaze, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly but did not reply. In the blink of an eye, only 3 of the 5 presidents were left. The defeat was set. Everyone knew that it was only a matter of time. As long as Di Beichen was willing, the remaining 3 presidents would all stay here. Chapter 61-65. Bang! Junhong Cheng's figure fell heavily to the ground. Dugu's face was indifferent, and the corners of his lips curled into a sarcastic arc. You've been focusing on scheming all these years. Your cultivation hasn't improved much. Junhong Cheng's face was extremely ugly. In fact, he had always known in his heart that his cultivation talent was not as good as Dugu's. Even though Dugu had spent a lot of time looking for Di Baichen over the years, he still couldn't catch up with Dugu's cultivation. In fact, it was precisely because he knew that he had no hope in terms of strength that he began to look for other ways. As the head of the family, strength was very important, but so was strategy. Indeed, now it seemed that he had failed. Head of the family, the cultivators of the Jun family were anxious. Dugu, so what if you are stronger than me? If it weren't for your better luck, you would have been defeated long ago. At this moment, Junhong Cheng didn't feel that there was anything wrong with his approach. It was just that God had been helping Dugu. If Di Baichen hadn't come back, the Di family would have been defeated long ago. At this moment, a series of footsteps suddenly came from behind. Look, isn't that President Lu and President Song? There are also cultivators from the Di family and the Ouyang family around them. It seems that they were the ones who found President Lu and Song Qinghao. Everyone knew very well that the two presidents didn't come before, not because they were uncomfortable as President Lei and Song Qinghao had said, but because they had used some means to prevent them from coming. This was probably the result of trying to steal a chicken, only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. If President Lu and Song Qinghao had come earlier, Lei Ming and Luo Qinghao wouldn't have died. Feng Yuxian and the other two, who had fallen into despair, suddenly let out a sigh of relief after seeing President Lu's figure. They only felt their whole body relax. For the first time, they felt that President Lu was their savior. Lu Hongwei and Song Langtian were very anxious all the way, for fear that something would happen to Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang if they were late. They were also very angry about what happened yesterday. They never thought that Lei Ming and the others would go so far and do such a hateful thing. Last night, when they told Lei Ming and the others about their idea, the five of them didn't object too much. Although they were a little unwilling, they still agreed in the end. Originally, they felt that it was a little strange and thought that it would take some time to convince them, but they didn't expect that everything would go much smoother than they thought. However, they did not expect that they would be drugged unconscious that very night, so that they would not be able to attend today. If someone hadn't found them, they probably wouldn't have woken up today. Along the way, a complicated feeling of regret and depression spread in their hearts. It was all their fault for being too relaxed, resulting in such negligence. However, when they arrived and saw the skeletons all over the mountains and plains, and Di Baichen's party completely occupying the advantage, their hearts were incomparably shocked. This situation seemed to be a little different from what they had imagined. Song Langtian and Lu Hongwei couldn't help but look at each other. So Di Baichen's group had the advantage now? President Lu, are Di Baichen's group so strong? Song Langtian swallowed a mouthful of saliva. In the face of such a large number of skeletons, he could no longer maintain his image as the president calmly. This is the first time I know about it. Chapter 61-66. Why are we only seeing the three presidents? Where are President Lei and President Luo? Song Langtian was a little puzzled. Logically speaking, it was impossible for President Lei and President Luo to be absent at this time. Lu Hongwei was also puzzled. This situation was unexpected. Looking at the sorry state of Feng Yuxian and the other two, it seemed to be very difficult. Feng Yuxian saw Lu Hongwei and Song Langtian standing there in a daze, seemingly shocked by the situation in front of them. She immediately shouted, "President Lu, save us! Save us!" Lu Hongwei was dumbfounded. Feng Yuxian was actually asking him for help. At the same time, Di Baichen turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang and by Li Yanche again. He suddenly understood why Hongzhuang had made such a decision earlier. Obviously, with Yanche's mental strength, he had probably sensed that President Lu and the others were approaching. Once President Lu arrived, they would not be able to kill Lei Ming unscrupulously. Therefore, they had to take Lei Ming's life before President Liu arrived. Although Liu Hongwei still did not understand the situation in front of him, he still said, "Stop. Everyone stop." Seeing this, Di Beichen also stopped the skeletons. He could ignore other people, but he could not do so in front of these two presidents. Because these two presidents had supported them from beginning to end. His principle of doing things had always been that if people respected him, he would respect them tenfold. If others were good to him, he would naturally be good to them. Under Di Beichen's command, the skeletons neatly opened a path for Liu Hongwei and the others to pass through like soldiers. Looking at such a shocking scene, everyone could not help but be shocked again. These skeletons did not seem to be dead at all under Di Beichen's control, and such a uniform action was even more shocking. This was the first time Liu Hongwei saw a dark attribute cultivator controlling skeletons. But he had to admit that such control was indeed very powerful. Soon, Liu Hongwei had arrived in front of them. Feng Yuxian and the other two could not help but breathe a sigh of relief when they saw the skeleton army stop. After fighting for so long, they were also very tired. Di Linxian and the others also stopped and stood beside Di Beichen. Today's matter was not their problem from beginning to end. If the 5 presidents had not gone too far, things would not have developed to this point. What the hell is going on? Liu Hongwei's face was livid. As soon as he opened his mouth, the deterrence of a high position for a long time directly erupted. Feng Yuxian quickly said, "President, Di Beichen and the others are too much. President Lei and President Luo have already died. You must seek justice for the 2 presidents." As soon as these words came out, Liu Hongwei and Song Langtian both trembled, their faces filled with disbelief. For a moment they even wondered if they had heard it. "President Feng, are you saying that President Lei and President Luo have fallen?" Song Langtian couldn't help asking. Feng Yuxian nodded. "Yes, it's all thanks to them." Liu Hongwei's expression instantly became complicated. He never thought that the 2 presidents would die like this. This matter was far more complicated than he had imagined. How could this be? Liu Hongwei's face was pale, and his heart was filled with regret. Chapter 61-67. President Liu, we can't just listen to one side of the story. Di Linshuan's face was slightly cold. He didn't think much of the 5 presidents before, but after seeing their faces today, he no longer had any respect for them. Today, the 5 presidents stopped the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly and even threatened to kill all the Dark Attribute cultivators. Now we can only blame ourselves for falling to this point. Di Linxian Yin Ye's face was livid. Although he also understood that Di Linxian was telling the truth, they had lost face today. Are you the only ones who can make a move, and we have to passively take a beating? Di Yujua's face was arrogant and indifferent, and his dark eyes were filled with killing intent. Facing that pair of terrifying eyes, Yin Yi couldn't help but shut his mouth. Now facing these people again, he no longer had the confidence he had before. You actually threatened to kill all the Dark Attribute cultivators? Liu Hongwei looked at Feng Yuxian and the others in disbelief. He thought that they just wanted to stop this matter, but he didn't expect them to go so far and want to kill the other party. Feng Yuxian said weakly, "This decision was made by President Lei suddenly. Don't you know how to stop it?" Liu Hongwei was also furious. He thought that it was bad enough that they couldn't come today, but he didn't expect them to do such a thing. Even if it was just a few words, he roughly understood the whole process of the matter. With Lei Ming's simple and violent character, he must have wanted to take this opportunity to kill them all. But he didn't expect the Di family's background to be so terrifying. Instead, he was controlled by the other party, and even lost his life. Feng Yuxian and the others looked embarrassed. They opened their mouths and wanted to explain, but they didn't know what to say. In fact, they didn't expect Lei Ming to make such a decision, because Lei Ming didn't discuss it with them beforehand. When Lei Ming said it, they were already in such a situation, and they couldn't object. So it went on inexplicably like this. Liu Hongwei took a deep breath. After understanding all the situation, his mind was in a mess. This situation was too complicated, and the most important problem was how to deal with it. Song Langtian, didn't know what to say at this moment. In just half a day, the situation had fallen to such an irreversible point. Strictly speaking, this was indeed the fault of the 5 guild leaders. Even if they opposed the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly, they shouldn't have made such a crazy decision. However, killing 2 guild leaders was not an easy task. After a while, Lu Hongwei turned to Di Beichen and said, Di Beichen, can you let these skeletons leave first? Being surrounded by a sea of skeletons was not a pleasant feeling. Even if they had made a decision, it seemed that they had no choice but to do so under the threat of the skeleton. Di Beichen stared at Lu Hongwei. He didn't want things to escalate to this point, but there were many things that he had no choice but to do, so he didn't regret it. He respected Chairman Lu because of his tolerance and understanding of them. However, if President Lu was the same as Lei Ming and the others, he would not back down either. For the people he cared about, he had no way out. Chapter 61-68. What happened today must have crossed Di Beichen's bottom line. The look in his eyes was completely different from the one he saw yesterday. Looking at the corpses on the ground around him, he understood that this battle had been very torturous. Both sides had suffered casualties, but the 5 major guilds had suffered more. He still remembered that yesterday, he had confidently guaranteed that this matter would not be too big of a problem. However, he did not expect something like this to happen today. It was normal for Di Beichen to have such an attitude. Once bitten, twice shy. Even he could not easily let these skeletons leave under such circumstances. Otherwise, the entire Di family would not have any protection. The next moment, Lu Hongwei looked at the surrounding cultivators and suddenly said, I hereby announce that from today onwards, the Dark Sacred Assembly is officially established. From today onwards, there are no longer only 7 major guilds in the upper realm, but 8 major guilds. Following Lu Hongwei's words, the crowd was in an uproar. Even though they had already guessed that this would be the result today, they could not help but feel touched when it really happened. This meant that from today onwards, the structure of the upper realm had begun to change. They had no reason to discriminate against dark attribute cultivators. Di Beichen was no longer just the young master of the Di family, but also had another identity, the president of the Dark Sacred Assembly. At this moment, no one doubted Di Beichen's ability anymore. He had used his actions to prove that he was worthy of this title. Feng Yuxian could not help but feel anxious when she saw Lu Hongwei directly announce this result. President Lu, how could you announce this directly? After experiencing today's events, she was very depressed and had also suffered a certain blow. However, after President Lu appeared, she only hoped that he could change everything. She did not expect President Lu to directly announce this result. This also meant that the 5 presidents had completely failed in front of Di Beichen. Hearing Feng Yuxian's words, Lu Hongwei's expression was calm and unmoved. This was my decision yesterday. If you hadn't knocked me out and prevented me from coming, this wouldn't have happened today. The dignified voice was filled with unconcealable anger. Lu Hongwei was very angry. The whole thing clearly did not need to be like this, but it had become so difficult to even clean up the mess. As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd went into an uproar. The smart people present had already guessed that Lu Hongwei and Song Longtian's absence must not be because they were uncomfortable, but they didn't expect the 5 presidents to be so bold as to knock them out directly. Feng Yuxian, Yin Yi, and Hu Heipo's expressions turned ugly. They all understood that this matter had truly angered President Lu. Under such circumstances, they didn't have the confidence to say anything else. If it wasn't for President Lu's appearance, they might have already lost their lives. After announcing this decision, Lu Hongwei turned his head and looked at Di Beichen. Di Beichen also understood that this matter had nothing to do with President Lu. It was just that no one had expected Lei Ming and the others to do something so outrageous. Retreat! Di Beichen's loud and clear voice resounded, and the group of skeletons respectfully saluted in his direction, as if they were subjects submitting to Di Beichen. The aura was vast and the scene was spectacular. Chapter 61-69. Thud thud thud. Everyone looked at the orderly skeleton army, and could not calm down for a long time. This scene was too spectacular. At this moment, everyone could not help but envy Baichen's ability. If they could also summon such a skeleton army, how awe-inspiring would that be? The few guild leaders heaved a sigh of relief after seeing the skeleton army leave. Previously, when they were surrounded, even their breathing was suffocating. Seeing this, Lu Hongwei's eyes revealed a trace of relief. He had always known that Baichen was an upright and kind person. If it was not for today's events that forced him to this point, he would not have done such a thing. Guild Leader Lu, how should we account for the deaths of Guild Leader Lei and Guild Leader Luo? Yin Ye's face was ashen. The deaths of two guild leaders was a big matter. If it was any other day, it would be a serious crime for someone to kill a guild leader. Today's matter was a conflict between guilds. Life and death are up to fate. Since they have died, it means that they were not strong enough. We will not pursue this matter further, Lu Hongwei said. Guild Leader Lu, how can this be? Hu Heipo was stunned. How could such a big matter be resolved so casually? Then what do you want to do? Lu Hongwei raised his eyebrows. If Guild Leader Lu did not take the initiative to kill all darkness attribute cultivators, things would not have developed to this stage. Now that both sides have suffered so many casualties, are you saying that you want to exchange a life for a life? Are the casualties not enough? Lu Hongwei was already in a fit of anger. With so many things happening, he was extremely unhappy. Hearing the other three guild leaders' incessant questions, he felt even more irritated. With such a large number of casualties, it would definitely be a blow to the reputation of all the guilds. Today's matter had reduced them to a joke. But now that things had developed to this stage, the only way was to stop the losses. Continuing to cause trouble would not benefit either side. Lu Hongwei's words blocked Hu Heipo's mouth. Hu Heipo could not answer a single word. The three guild leaders looked at each other helplessly. Guild leader Lu was originally biased towards Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Now that Lei Ming had died, they had no right to speak in such a situation. Therefore, they could only let President Lu make the decision. From now on, I hope that everyone will no longer discriminate against dark attribute cultivators. They are the same as everyone else. Lu Hongwei's loud voice rang in everyone's ears. Similarly, I hope that everyone won't hold a grudge over what happened today. Every major decision will be accompanied by blood. This is a change in the upper realm structure. At the end of his speech, Lu Hongwei's gaze fell on Baichen and the three guild leaders. Although you've met on the battlefield today, as guild leaders of your respective guilds, it's inevitable that you'll cross paths on a daily basis. After today, I hope that you can turn weapons of war into gifts of jade and silk, and write off all these grievances. President Lu, don't worry. I will. Baichen's cold face finally showed a faint smile at this moment. But this smile was not for the three presidents, but for Lu Hongwei and Song Langtian. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't have enough time, he wouldn't have minded killing all three of them at once. Chapter 6170. Learning from his mistakes, he believed that these three presidents were not stupid people. If they were to stir up trouble again, they might not be as lucky as they were today. Even though Feng Yuxian and the other two were furious, they understood that they had no choice but to lower their heads. Yujue and the others heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this. Fortunately, President Lu was not like Lei Ming. Otherwise, this matter would have never ended. Linxian heaved a sigh of relief as a gratified smile appeared on his face. This decision, which everyone had thought to be incomparably crazy, had actually succeeded. Baichen had relied on his own power to change the situation in the upper realm, and had also won a chance for a peaceful life for the darkness-type cultivators. All the darkness-type cultivators could not help but cheer at this moment. Many of them were crying tears of joy. They had been waiting for this day for a long time. They had even prepared themselves to lose their lives today. However, their wish had come true. They no longer had to endure the gazes of others, and could live openly. Master, this is great. Xiaohei could not help but jump up. So many twists and turns had happened today. Only now could she truly feel at ease. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. Her eyes were filled with complicated emotions. She knew that Di Baichen would definitely be able to do it. Before she had made this decision, she had already thought of many possibilities. She had even thought that if there was no way to reverse the situation in the end, she would do everything she could to invite Granny Hua and the others over. This was because she could not accept the fact that the people she cared about had left just like that. Fortunately, the situation was not that bad. After gathering the power of so many people, Di Baichen had summoned an incomparably large number of skeletons. Xiao Yanlong lowered his head dejectedly. His entire being seemed to have received a huge blow. Even his hair seemed to have turned white at this moment. They had thought of so many ways, but they never thought that they would fail at the last moment. This feeling was simply too unbearable. The rise of the Di family was unstoppable. After witnessing today's events, it was likely that no one would dare to make an enemy out of them. Di Yujue had made it very clear that he would destroy their family and the Jun family. Thinking of this, Xiao Yanlong felt as if all the strength in his body had been sucked out, bringing with it extreme despair and regret. He raised his head slightly and looked at Di Yujue's cold and indifferent face. He understood that all of this could no longer be changed. Looks like I'm quite lucky. Jiang Wenyan chuckled. I didn't lose my life in this competition. Young master, does what you said before still count? The cultivators of the Jiang clan could not help but ask. What words? You said you're not going to be the young master anymore. Jiang Wenyan spread out his hands and raised his eyebrows slightly. With an innocent look he said, You must have heard wrongly. At the same time, the cultivators from the Morong family also asked the same question. Morong Jing chuckled and said, Are you kidding me? It wasn't easy for my father to hand over the position of young lord to me. How can I give it up so easily? Am I such an irresponsible person? Everyone looked at each other and rolled their eyes. Chapter 61-71. Just like that, the Dark Sacred Assembly's founding ceremony came to an end, and the 5 guilds returned in defeat. Lu Hongwei spoke a lot about the changes after the Dark Sacred Assembly was established, the various considerations he had made, and the reasons for his final decision. It was not because he was forced by the situation, but the result of careful consideration. Not only that, but he also reprimanded Feng Yuxian and the others for their actions this time, and prevented similar situations from happening in the future. Feng Yuxian and the others did not say anything before leaving. They were exhausted, and only hoped to go back and rest quickly. Of course, another more important reason was that they had lost all their face today. They really did not want to face other people's gazes. Lu Hongwei also left after explaining some things. The Dark Sacred Assembly was a newly established guild, and Di Baichen and the others must have set up many rules themselves. What he explained was nothing more than some common rules between the 8 guilds, as well as some rules that needed to be followed on a daily basis. Although the 8 guilds usually operated independently and did not have much contact with each other, the safety of the entire upper realm was related to them. Therefore, under some special circumstances, they could not avoid working together. Di Baichen naturally did not have any objections to this. In this battle, whether it was the Di family, the Lin family, or the Dark Sacred Assembly, all of them had suffered significant losses. During the battle, everyone's hearts had never been calm. However, when they were cleaning up the mess, they felt even more sad. Facing the fallen cultivators, Di Baichen felt very guilty. His expression was very gloomy all day, and he exuded a faint sadness. Baichen, none of us wanted to see this happen, but this was forced by the situation. Everyone can understand. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Baichen with concern. Di Baichen had not said much all day, but she could understand Di Baichen's thoughts with just one look. Normally, they would often fight, and they had seen many deaths and injuries. However, when all of this was related to the family members they cared about, they could not help but feel sad. Di Baichen nodded slightly. I understand. Everyone understands. Otherwise, everyone would not be so determined to help me. It's just that I can't help but feel guilty when I see the sad faces of the deceased cultivators' loved ones. He was the young master of the clan, and his responsibility was to protect the cultivators of the clan. However, He was also the one who had caused so much damage to everyone. In fact, after he had decided to do this, he had hesitated, worried that his family would be affected by his actions. But at the same time, he was also very clear that his strength alone was not enough. Bailey Hongzhuang hugged Di Beichen from behind. Her lips curled into a faint smile. She could feel all of Di Beichen's guilt and sorrow. She thought that the reason why she liked Di Beichen so much was not only because of his handsome appearance and powerful strength, but also because of his sense of responsibility. Compared to the selfishness of Jun Lingxuan and the others, his sense of responsibility to carry everything on his shoulders was the biggest shining point, and also the biggest difference between them. I understand what you're thinking. This kind of grief from the death of your loved ones is very difficult to bear. But have you noticed that everyone never looked at you with the slightest bit of blame? This was because these sacrifices were for a better future. The stronger the clan, the better the protection of the clan's descendants in the future. Chapter 6172. For this point, Bailey Hongzhuang had only discovered it a while ago. In the past, they had always fought alone, and had never implicated the entire family. Originally, she didn't know how to face those gazes. It wasn't until she noticed that there wasn't the slightest bit of resentment in everyone's eyes that she understood that this was the feeling of a family. Their small family had indeed been hurt, but they understood that the big family had a better future. Therefore, she understood at that moment. For a big family to be able to stand tall, this kind of thing had definitely happened more than once or twice. Everyone had already prepared to sacrifice themselves for the family, just as the family would always protect them. This was the cohesion of a family. Bailey Hongzhuang's gentle voice walked into Di Beichen's heart, bringing a trace of sunlight to his heart that was shrouded in darkness. That trace of sunlight gradually grew stronger, dispelling the surrounding darkness and bringing light and warmth. Di Beichen suddenly turned around. Hongzhuang, I want to go out and take a look. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. Okay. Walking on the family's road, one by one, the disciples passed by them. Noticing that the crowd not only didn't have the slightest bit of criticism, but instead, their gazes were filled with admiration, Di Beichen suddenly understood what Bailey Hongzhuang meant. Young master is really too amazing. He actually established the Dark Sacred Assembly. He's really great. From now on, no one will dare to provoke our family anymore, because everyone knows how powerful our young master is. You don't know how proud I was of the family when I felt their gazes on me at that time. A group of 14 to 15-year-old cultivators gathered together. They didn't participate in this battle, but they saw it. Look, everyone is proud of you. Bailey Hongzhuang's face bloomed with a spring breeze smile. Looking at these children who hadn't been cultivating for long, she couldn't help but think of herself. Di Beichen's expression gradually eased, and his heart gradually relaxed. Not far away, some of the older cultivators were also walking over slowly. Young master, it's great that you're able to establish the Dark Sacred Assembly. My son is also a dark attribute cultivator. He won't have to feel inferior in the future. A man looked at Di Beichen excitedly. Because the young master was also of the dark attribute, his son was not kicked out of the family because of this. However, it was inevitable that he would feel inferior. Now everything had finally changed. This is what I should do. Di Beichen's lips curled into a smile. At this moment, his heart was completely at ease. Indeed, there were many casualties this time, but in the future countless darkness-type cultivators would benefit. All in all, it was all worth it. Noticing the change in Di Beichen's expression, the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's face became brighter. After the battle ended, the Di family first held a memorial ceremony for the cultivators who had fallen in this battle. Di Yujue also gave more compensation to the families of these cultivators. Every cultivator who had sacrificed themselves for the family was a hero. They were the pride that they would always remember. After everything was arranged properly, the Di family held a celebratory feast to celebrate their success. This was not only the success of the Dark Sacred Assembly, but also the success of the Di family. Chapter 6173. Since the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly, there would be cultivators arriving here every day. Unlike before, where they couldn't see the light of day, every practitioner was pleasantly surprised to register as a member of the Dark Guild and receive the Dark Attribute training method. This was a pleasant surprise for all Dark cultivators. The cultivation method of the Dark Attribute had been lost for many years. Over the years, no one had been able to cultivate it. They never thought that they would have it all now. For a time, almost all Dark cultivators worshipped Bachin as a god. That kind of worship and reverence was not something that other guild leaders could have. Bachin became the guild leader of the Dark Sacred Assembly without any surprise. And under his decision, Huang Futing became the vice guild leader of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Usually, he would not stay in the Dark Sacred Assembly often, and Huang Futing and Qin Wen'er had already planned to take root in the Emperor Cloud City, so he was undoubtedly the most suitable person to be the vice guild leader to deal with many matters of the Dark Sacred Assembly. Huang Futing did not expect that Bachin would hand over such a heavy responsibility to him, and he was a little flattered. He originally wanted to refuse, but after hearing Bachin's various reasons, he did not refuse and accepted it. For so many years, he had been organizing Dark cultivators to gather together. But to complete this pioneering work, they alone were not enough. The most fortunate thing was that his vision was not wrong. Choosing Bachin as the young master was the wisest decision. Bailey Hongzhuang's current identity was also very magical. Since her dual attribute identity was exposed, she had become the Dark Sacred Lady. Lu Hongwei also clearly told everyone that he had never agreed to let Bailey Hongzhuang resign from the position of the Light Sacred Lady. No matter what she did in the future, the Light Sacred Lady would only be her. Bailey Hongzhuang knew Lu Hongwei's good intentions and did not refuse, not to mention that she was the true successor of the Light Sacred Lady. Therefore, under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang had a dual identity. Not only was she the Light Sacred Lady, but she was also the Dark Sacred Lady. However, no one objected to such a situation. In addition, Bachin also selected a few deacons from some outstanding cultivators. At the same time, he also left some empty positions. If any of the new members were found to be outstanding, these positions would be reserved for them. Perhaps it was because the path of the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly was too difficult, but all the Dark cultivators were obedient to Bachin's orders. Therefore, the entire guild proceeded in an orderly manner. Yujue had also instructed Bachin in this aspect. He believed that Bachin had the ability to handle these matters, but he also knew that the young master was not the head of the family and would not understand many small matters. Most of the time, these small matters had a great impact. On this day, Bachin and Bailey Hongzhuang had just returned from the Dark Sacred Assembly when they were informed to go to the assembly hall to discuss some matters. The two of them looked at each other, but did not stop. Instead, they hastened their footsteps and hurried to the meeting hall. Every time they went to the meeting hall, it was almost always an extremely important matter. Presumably, the head of the family had made a decision and wanted to inform everyone. When Bachin and Bailey Hongzhuang arrived, they discovered that everyone was gathered here. Other than the heads of the D family and Lin family, Lan Yunxiao, Situ Yan, and the others were also present. Chapter 6174. Bachin and Hongzhuang have also arrived. Seeing the two of them, Yujue's expression eased a bit, revealing a trace of a smile. Bachin and Bailey Hongzhuang bowed and sat down at the side. Since everyone is here, then I'll get straight to the point and talk about the purpose of calling them here today. Yujue's voice rang out. After the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly, I believe everyone is very clear about the Jun family and Xiao family's attitude towards us. As long as there's a possibility, they'll think of a way to deal with us. Hearing Yujue's words, everyone's expression sank. As early as the day, they were extremely angry with Jun Hongcheng and Xiao Yanlong's actions. These two fellows were constantly waiting for an opportunity to catch them all in one fell swoop. As long as they were slightly careless, their memories could be stolen by them. This feeling was very unpleasant. That's right. The Jun family has been deliberately plotting to deal with us all these years. Now the Xiao family has also been reduced to jackals of the same lair. Di Linxuan's eyes were cold. They had long wanted to remove these two malignant tumors. However, because the difference in strength between the two sides wasn't big, they had always been apprehensive. After all, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Before they had a foolproof plan, they couldn't act rashly. Otherwise, once the entire family was implicated, they would become sinners for all eternity. It was precisely because of this consideration that the Jun family had become more and more excessive over the years. Therefore, I've decided to remove this malignant tumor. Di Yujua's expression was solemn. He had already said ruthlessly that as long as his family didn't fall this time, he would definitely destroy the Jun family and Xiao family. He couldn't tolerate these fellows thinking of ways to secretly harm his family. And the only way to solve all of this was to kill them and eliminate all future troubles. Even if he had to pay a price for doing so, from a long-term point of view, this was definitely a good thing. Although the Di family and the Jun family hadn't had any major conflicts in the past few years, there would always be many casualties due to the enmity between the two families whenever their disciples went out to train. As for the conspiracies and battles between adult cultivators, there were countless of them. They had never carefully calculated it, but the things they remembered in their minds were already a terrifying number. In the past, it was because they didn't have enough strength and confidence. But now the Di family was no longer the same as before. In addition, the Jun family had been hit hard several times in a row. Their strength was no longer the same as before. Making a move now was also a very good opportunity. If it weren't for the fact that the matter with the Dark Sacred Assembly had just ended, and he still needed some time to deal with the family matters, he would have taken action the next day. For a moment no one spoke. They agreed with this idea very much. Everything that Jun Hongcheng had done over the years was unbearable and unforgivable. If they hadn't been lucky enough to turn misfortune into blessings every time, they really didn't know what would have happened to them now. They didn't want such things to happen again in the future. Things like luck couldn't be guaranteed. Even if they were unlucky once, it could be a devastating blow. "Father, are you going to make a move now?" Di Beichen asked aloud. Chapter 6175. Are we just going to give up on the land of inheritance? Di Xiaofeng frowned. He was 100% in favor of exterminating the Jun family. It was just that the Jun family had always endured for the sake of the land of inheritance. With Jun Hongcheng's personality, if the Jun family suffered heavy losses, he would definitely put the secret key in a place where no one could find it. At that time, the Di family might never be able to open the land of inheritance. A trace of hesitation flashed through Di Yujua's eyes, and then they became resolute. Even if the land of inheritance is never opened in the future, we can't let the Jun family continue to exist. The magnetic and loud voice was filled with determination and certainty. Di Yujua's expression was calm. He had already thought about this matter carefully before. In fact, Jun Hongcheng and Xiao Yanlong had been threatening him with this matter for a while. This feeling of being threatened was very uncomfortable. He didn't want the Di family to be kept in check like this, so he decided to go all out. As soon as the Hell deity finished speaking, the expressions of everyone shook. They hadn't expected that Di Yujua would actually make such a decisive decision. This wasn't a small matter for the entire Di family. Di Yujua turned to look at Di Lin Xian. "Father, Jun Hongcheng and Xiao Yanlong are very clear that the secret key is our weakness. We already gave in once before, but they actually did something like this during the establishment ceremony of the Dark Sacred Assembly. It's clear that they have a trump card. If we give in again and again, it will only make their arrogance rise. If they can threaten us once, they can threaten us a second time. Rather than that, it's better to give up everything. If we can get the secret key, that's naturally the best. But if we can't, we'll have one less enemy to scheme against all day. It's a good thing for the entire family." Di Lin Xian fell into silence. The Di family's land of inheritance had been passed down for a long time. This was already an open secret of the entire Di family. He had always hoped that the land of heritage could be reopened, and Beichen was the one who could open it. He had never thought that things would develop to this point. Once the secret key disappeared, the land of heritage might never be opened again. Lan Yunxiao and the rest didn't say anything. This was the D family's matter. The choice between passing down the family's legacy and eliminating their opponents was a difficult one. It wasn't an easy choice to make. Old Lin, what do you think? Di Lin Xian turned his head to look at Lin Wenlan. He understood that everything Di Yujue said made sense, but it was really a pity to let the land of heritage become a treasure trove that could never be opened. Lin Wenlan also understood the importance of the land of heritage, so she did not make any assertions immediately. After a while, Di Linxian said, "It is indeed a good decision to get rid of the Jun family as soon as possible. We have tolerated them for too many years. It would be a good thing if we can end them as soon as possible." Hearing this, Di Yujue's eyes lit up. "Father, you agree? Before we take action, you have to think of a way to get the secret key. Although the chances of success are very small with Jun Hongqing's craftiness, we still have to try." Lin Wenlan sighed in relief when she saw that Di Lin Xian had made his decision. "In that case, we have to prepare for battle again." Chapter 6176. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. Neither of them expressed their opinions on this matter. In their hearts, Di Yujue had always been a very calm person. However, this series of events had really touched his bottom line. In fact, if Di Beichen hadn't summoned a large number of skeletons this time, the Xiao family and the Jun family might have caused them to lose everything. They clearly remembered Di Yujue's angry look at that time. It was obvious that he didn't want something like this to happen again. He didn't want this kind of variable to threaten the family's life. Even if he had to give up the land of inheritance, he wouldn't hesitate. Di Beichen felt that Di Yujue's decision was correct. Although the land of inheritance was very mysterious, it was also very important to the family. However, it hadn't been open for so many years, and the family hadn't changed much. The only regret was that they all knew that once the land of inheritance was opened, the family's cultivators' talents would be increased. This was the most amazing thing about the land of inheritance. Fortunately, the Di family's position was very stable now. With the support of the Dark Sacred Assembly, the Di family's position would only get higher and higher in the future. Sometimes giving up was necessary. In that case, you should make a plan. When do you plan to take action? We'll set off together. Di Linxian was also a person who acted quickly. After making a decision, he didn't hesitate at all. Since they had to deal with it sooner or later, it was best to deal with it as soon as possible. Jun Hongqing might have already predicted that we would take action, so he took the opportunity to transfer some of the cultivators out and leave the family's bloodline. Lin Wenlan slowly said, "This kind of action was something that every family would do when faced with a calamity, so we will take action as soon as possible. I will arrange for some of the cultivators to set off first in these 2 days. After 3 days, we will officially take action." Di Yujue's tone was firm, strong, and decisive. Before he had gathered everyone, he had already made a comprehensive plan. If they wanted to destroy a family, the number of people needed would naturally not be small. If they rushed over on the same day, even with the teleportation array, it would still take a long time. After all, the teleportation array could only transport a limited number of people at a time. They simply did not have the time to waste on it. Therefore, they needed a certain amount of time to let these cultivators go in batches. When the time came, they would gather and begin the operation. "All right, I'll leave it to you." Di Lin Xian nodded. Seeing this, Di Beichen also said, "I'll also go to the Sacred Assembly, so that everyone can make some preparations." If it was just to deal with the Jun family, then the Di family alone would be enough. However, no one knew if the Xiao family would also be involved. Therefore, the more people that went, the better. Even if the outcome was inevitable, reducing the number of casualties was still their biggest goal. "I'll have to trouble the cultivators of your guild. Don't worry, father. They will be very happy." Di Beichen smiled. Currently, the Dark Sacred Assembly was developing very well. Although it had only been a few days, the joyous and harmonious appearance of everyone was not just for show. He had confidence in his sacred assembly. Good. Dujua patted Di Baichen's shoulder with satisfaction. His face was full of joy. I'll leave it to you. Chapter 6177. For a time, the Di family began to get busy again. In a short period of time, many cultivators had already received the order from the family head. After hearing this order, everyone was stunned at first, then revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Really? Is the family head really going to attack the Jun family? That's great. I've been unhappy with the Jun family for a long time. Over the years, they've become more and more annoying. I can finally take advantage of this opportunity to vent my anger. That's right. Those guys who make people sick should have died long ago. The hatred accumulated over the years had been engraved in everyone's hearts. Now that they were finally going to have a decisive battle, everyone couldn't help but be excited. Not only some young cultivators, but even some older cultivators couldn't hold back the excitement in their hearts at this moment. They were also people who had fought with the Jun family. Whether it was the young master's matter, the alchemy competition, or Di Kaiyuan, everything had poked at everyone's heart. Every time they learned that the mastermind behind the scenes was the Jun family, they couldn't wait to tear the other party into pieces. However, they also understood that the family couldn't attack without caring about anything. But they didn't expect it to happen now. Master, it seems that everyone really hates the Jun family. Xiao Hei couldn't help but sigh when she saw the excited expressions on everyone's faces. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. The things the Jun family has done over the years are indeed disgusting. It's normal for everyone to have such feelings. Di Baichen had a lot of support in the dark congregation. After he said this matter, almost all the cultivators signed up without hesitation. Young master, you don't have to make a special trip to this matter. You just have to pass the message. As long as you need it, everyone will definitely respond immediately. Huang Futing smiled. Even if many people had already changed the title of Di Baichen to president, he still maintained this title. This was because there was a contract between him and Di Baichen, a contract that he was willing to sign. This title also proved that they were closer to each other. Di Baichen smiled faintly. He had already guessed that no one would back down. But when he saw that everyone was more enthusiastic than he had imagined, he felt an indescribable satisfaction in his heart. If only Master could see this scene, it would be great. The dark cultivators had suffered a lot over the years, and now, the good times had come. Since it's such a big matter, I naturally have to come. Oh right, every participating cultivator will be rewarded. Help me take charge of this matter. Don't worry, young master. Leave this to me. After giving the orders, Di Baichen returned to the Di family. Baichen, can we take a look at the entrance to the land of heritage? Seeing that Di Baichen had returned, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately voiced her thoughts. Hearing this, Di Baichen raised his eyebrows slightly. Why do you suddenly want to go take a look? We've been waiting for a chance to enter the land of heritage, but after this incident, we may never have the chance to enter again. So I want to take a look at the entrance. I also want to know if there are any other ways to open the land of heritage other than the secret key. They all agreed with their father's approach, but they couldn't help but feel pity for such an opportunity. Di Baichen's lips curled up slightly, and he suddenly stretched out his hand. Chapter 6178. Since it's a place my wife wants to go, why not? Di Baichen held her soft little hand and slowly walked towards the back of the mountain. He also wanted to see what the entrance to the land of heritage looked like. As a person with the cursed body, he had always been regarded as the only hope to enter the land of heritage. However, no one would have thought that this place would become a place where they could no longer enter. The Di family's territory was very large. Even though they had lived here for so long, there were still some places that they had never been to. As the two of them walked to the back of the mountain, they realized that there were still cultivators from the Di family guarding the place. Young master, madam. The guard bowed respectfully. Let's go up and take a look. Yes, the back of the mountain was very large and surrounded by mountain peaks. It was not very conspicuous among the mountains. However, this was an extremely important place for the D family to pass down their heritage. Today's sunlight was very faint. It was bright but not dazzling. As it shone on the body, it gave off a sense of warmth. Accompanied by a gentle breeze, the smell of grass wafted to the tip of their noses. It was comfortable and relaxing. Such good weather. It's really suitable for going out. Bailey Hongzhuang spread out her hands and allowed the breeze to caress her body. It was as if her whole body could float with the wind. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate and beautiful face, Di Beichen's gaze became even gentler. Fortunately, he had such a cute person by his side all this time. Let's continue. Opening her eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang naturally held Di Beichen's hand. That warm feeling made her heart calm down. The smile on Di Beichen's lips never disappeared. Even if he was just quietly looking at Bailey Hongzhuang like this, it was a kind of happiness. Soon, the two of them arrived at the land of heritage. In front of them was a circular altar-like existence. It was entirely made of white jade, and faintly had a hint of cyan antiquity. The entire altar was very large, and gave off a sense of grandeur and magnificence. The moment he arrived, a heavy sense of history hit him in the face. Everything here had a sense of vicissitudes of history. Vaguely, Bailey Hongzhuang actually felt that everything here was very similar to when she had entered the Darkness Temple and Radiant Saint Hall. Even though everything here looked simple, the feeling it gave her was very similar. What a magical place. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. Di Beichen looked at the scene in front of him, and was also shocked. This altar looked very simple. There weren't many complicated totems, and it didn't have the mysterious aura of an ordinary altar. It looked simple and ordinary. Perhaps it was because it was too simple, that it gave off a feeling of returning to simplicity. The circular altar was enshrouded in white mist, and there was only a small round base in the center. This circular tray was very delicate. It was circular in shape, but it was split into two in the middle. However, there was a gap in the most important position, so the two halves were still connected. Noticing this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. If I'm not wrong, this should be the place where the blood fuses, right? Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichen, her eyes filled with curiosity. Di Beichen nodded slightly. That should be the case. The two of them walked to the back of the altar. There was a huge stone door here. Chapter 61-79. Obviously, this should be the place where the three keys were placed. Thinking back, it was really strange back then. The keys to your family's inheritance fell into the hands of the three families. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. Thinking back, the three family heads should have been on very good terms. She didn't expect that after so many years, they would become enemies. If the three seniors knew about the current situation, they would be very disappointed. However, time had changed too many things. Even families that had always been very close would change, because of some accumulated resentment. Hearing this, Di Beichen nodded slightly. I also think this is very interesting. Back then, it seemed that the ancestors of the three families had discovered this place together. However, in the end, it became our family's land of inheritance. However, the things in this land of inheritance are not only for our families. Although the land of inheritance hasn't been open for many years, I've checked the previous records. It's said that every time the land of inheritance opened, the three families would reap great rewards. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. So everyone's land of inheritance is a very good opportunity for the three families. Indeed. However, the gap between the opening of the land of inheritance became longer and longer. Perhaps it has something to do with the deterioration of the relationship between the three families. Di Beichen's gaze was distant. Because of this land of inheritance, the three families had developed to this stage. Thinking about how this land of inheritance might not be opened again in the future, he felt a little uncomfortable. The Jun family had been protecting the three great families for such a long time. From now on, the Jun family would completely disappear from this world. Their primary goal was to get rid of the Jun family. After that, The Xiao family would be the next step in their plan. After so many years of friendship, in just a few short years, it had deteriorated to this extent. But who could say whether it was right or wrong? Everyone stood on their own standpoints and made decisions for the good of the family. Just like how the Jun family and the Xiao family tried to deal with them. In order to protect their families, they could only destroy each other. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly looked at the totem in front of her. She only felt that the place where the 3 keys were placed was very mysterious. This totem had an indescribable aura of simplicity. Beichen, don't you think this totem looks familiar, as if you've seen it somewhere before? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. She didn't know why she had such a feeling, but she couldn't control it. Beichen slowly walked closer, and his gaze fell on the place where Bailey Hongzhuang was looking. With this look, his heart seemed to be touched for a moment. It was as if he had seen something that had been deeply imprinted in his heart many years ago. It was an indescribable sense of familiarity. Most importantly, the resonance from the bottom of his heart was a feeling he had never felt before. How could this be? Beichen stared at the ancient totem in a daze, his mind blank. He had no way to think about whether he had really seen such a totem before. What he was more curious about was why he had such a strong feeling. What happened? Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that Beichen's expression was different from usual, and a look of concern appeared on her face. Chapter 6180. Beichen did not answer Bailey Hongzhuang, and simply stared at the ancient totem in the same posture. An indescribable sense of familiarity filled his heart. He felt as if he had once lost a piece of his heart, and the totem in front of him was related to the missing part. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up Beichen. She did not understand why Beichen had suddenly become like this, but she also knew that the latter must have fallen into a strange state of mind. This situation was similar to the time when Beichen suddenly had an epiphany in front of the gate of the Darkness Shrine. This was the inheritance of the D family, and Beichen was the fated person who was most likely to unlock this inheritance. Hence, such emotions were not strange. However, why did Beichen's expression look so sad? It was a kind of sadness that emanated from the bottom of his heart, as if it was an unbearable pain in life. Even despair would not be this bad. She slowly shifted her gaze away from Beichen and looked at the totem again. There had always been a kind of complicated emotion in her heart, and she felt as if she had really seen this totem somewhere before. Most importantly, she did not know if she had been affected by Beichen's emotions, but there was also an indescribable sadness that spread in her heart. She stared at the totem, and when she came back to her senses, she suddenly realized that she had unknowingly burst into tears. How could this be? Bailey Hongzhuang wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. It was clearly the first time she had come to this place, so where exactly did these emotions come from? At the same time, Beichen also came back to his senses, and his eyes turned red. It was obvious that he had been suppressing the emotions in his heart previously. Beichen turned his gaze, and found that Bailey Hongzhuang was actually crying, and his heart tightened. "Dear, what's wrong?" Seeing the concern on Beichen's face, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. When she saw Beichen's expression earlier, she suddenly felt that it was a little strange, and at this moment, he was the one who had always been by her side. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and shook her head. "I'm fine. I don't know what happened just now, but when I looked at this totem, my heart felt very sad." "You too, right?" she said in a certain tone, because Beichen's expression from earlier was deeply imprinted in her heart. Beichen did not deny it. "Looking at this totem, there is indeed a very strange feeling. Perhaps we have been affected by the emotions of the land of heritage. Back then, the 3 great clans were on such good terms, but in the end they ended up like this. That's why even the land of heritage felt sad." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang fell into deep thought. Was it really like this? She did not know. Since we are already here, we see if we Beichen's blood we can't. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her willowy eyebrows, her eyes filled with interest. All this time, only the blood of the D family and Xiao family cultivators could light up the land of heritage. Once the blood successfully opened the land of heritage, then they only needed to place the 3 secret keys on it, and the land of heritage would open. Although they did not have the 3 secret keys now, if they were lucky this time, they might be able to gather all of them. This way, the D family would no longer need to be kept in check in the future. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's excited look, Di Beichen smiled and replied, "All right." The dagger drew across, and the blood immediately dripped into the round tray. Chapter 6181. The blood on both sides gradually began to fuse through the gap in the middle. Gradually, the blood turned from its initial bright red color to a faint golden color, as if half of a gold leaf had been dissolved in it. It looked extremely dazzling. The more blood fused, the more intense the golden color became. In the end, all the blood had turned into a dazzling golden color and emitted a mysterious aura. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other as they watched this scene curiously. They had only heard from Di Yujue that there would be a certain change after the blood of both parties fused, but they never thought that it would be such a change. Wow, how magical! Xiao He looked at the situation in the round tray in astonishment. This was the first time she had seen such a thing. It was indeed worthy of being called the land of inheritance of a large family. Master, since the blood has changed, does that mean that we can use your blood to open the land of inheritance? Xiao He looked curious. It would be impossible for an ordinary person's blood to fuse into this place to cause such a change, right? Di Beichen's face showed a thoughtful expression. Although I have always said that I wanted to give it a try, because of the secret key, I did not come. Father also did not explain this matter too clearly, so I don't know what is considered a success. In fact, it had been hundreds of years since the last time the land of inheritance was opened. Everything could only be found in the ancient books of the family. I vaguely remember that when Big Brother mentioned it, he said that if the blood of both parties turned black after the fusion, it would be a success. Di Beichen frowned and his eyes were filled with hesitation. Maybe I remembered wrongly. Black. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and felt a little disappointed. If it was black, then the color of their blood was obviously not right. Noticing the faint disappointment in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes, Di Beichen smiled. At that time, Big Brother only mentioned it casually, so I didn't remember it clearly. It won't be too late to ask Father when we get back later. What do you think? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. All right. Piercing Wind City. Xiao Yanlong stood in the courtyard with a worried look on his face. Ever since the establishment of the Dark Sacred Assembly and his return, he had been worried about a problem. How was Di Yujue's attitude that day resolved? He was certain that Di Yujue had the intention to kill him. After being friends for so many years, he knew Di Yujue's character very well. He had always been a swift and decisive person. He hadn't made a move before, partly because he had many concerns, and partly because he hadn't made up his mind. When he was in the Dark Sacred Assembly, he clearly felt Di Yujue's killing intent. With his character, it was impossible for him to change his mind after making such a decision. Moreover, when he faced Junhong Chung, Di Yujue had made it very clear that he would no longer be restricted by the secret key. In that case, Di Yujue would most likely take action very soon. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but panic. Facing the current D family and the Dark Sacred Assembly, once they launched an attack, they wouldn't be able to stop them at all. After this incident, their former allies had unknowingly distanced themselves from them. Isolated and helpless, this was the true portrayal of their current situation. Just as Xiao Yanlong was thinking, he unexpectedly saw Junhong Chung. Chapter 6182. Seeing Junhong Cheng's appearance, Xiao Yanlong already had a rough guess in his heart, but his face still showed a surprised expression. Junhong Cheng's mood was also very complicated. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang told him the news that day, he carefully calculated the time and asked some cultivators who had some understanding of this matter. But the results he got made him very suspicious. However, He didn't have the time to measure all of this now. At this critical moment of the Jun family's life and death, he only thought about how to get the family through this difficult time. Brother Xiao, I think you understand the current situation very well. Di Yujue is probably already preparing to take action. Jun Hongqing didn't say anything else, but went straight to the point. He came here today to ask for Xiao Yanlong's help. Ever since the incident with the Dark Sacred Assembly, he knew that this time it was really dangerous. If he couldn't find a way to get through this difficult time, perhaps the Jun family would really cease to exist in the future. He had never thought of this kind of result, and when this scene really happened in front of him, he also felt that it was very difficult to accept. Almost immediately, he had been looking for allies everywhere, but at this moment, those families who had a good relationship with him all pretended that they weren't familiar with him. Even if he proposed a very high reward, the other party's attitude was still resolute, and they weren't willing to relent at all. After repeated attempts, he found that the other party didn't want to take the opportunity to extort him, and his heart was filled with despair. The D family's rise now made many families fearful, and everyone was worried that they would get into trouble. If their families were implicated because of this matter, that was something that no one wanted to see. On the other hand, it was also because Di Beichen had a good relationship with the young masters of the Jiang family and the Morong family. If he wanted to deal with the Di family, the risk he would have to bear was too great. In a situation where it didn't concern them, there were simply not enough benefits to attract them to do it. After thinking about it, he only had the Xiao family left as an ally. Hearing Jun Hongqing's words, Xiao Yanlong sighed in his heart. I also guessed this point. If the Di family takes action, the Lin family will definitely take action as well. As long as the Dark Sacred Assembly also joins in, with our strength, it will be really difficult. I know it's very difficult, but we have no way out. Jun Hongqing's face was serious and dignified. If this battle can't be avoided, we can only use all of our strength. Once our family disappears, the next ones to be dealt with will be you. His gaze was fixated on Xiao Yanlong's body. At this time, the Xiao family definitely could not leave just like that. Once the Xiao family also retreated, they would really be a dead end. Seeing this, Xiao Yanlong also nodded seriously. I understand what you mean. The Di clan is not only targeting you, but also me. This time, we have no choice but to fight. After hearing Zhao's words, the family, and the family's families is. This was rights. This was a blessing. Was the family's family. They were grasshoppers on the same rope, so the Xiao family would also go all out. Even if their chances of winning weren't high, at least it wouldn't be too bad. Brother Xiao, thank you. Jun Hongqing's eyes were deep, and there was a flicker of light in them. Chapter 6183. If we use the secret key as our final trump card, will there be a chance for us to survive? Jun Hongqing was a little uncertain. All along, they knew how important the secret key was to the Di family. Every time the secret key was mentioned, Di Yujue would be very concerned. However, when Di Yujue said those words that day, the resolute expression on his face did not seem to be fake in the slightest. Speaking of which, we really took a wrong step this time. That's why we've fallen into this situation. Xiao Yanlong sighed. Di Yujue must be concerned about the secret key. It's only because our actions this time almost caused the Di family to be completely wiped out that he made such a decisive decision. Who would have thought that Lei Ming and the others would be so useless? Jun Hongqing's face was full of annoyance. At that time, everything was clearly calculated, and the entire plan could be said to be flawless. However, he did not think that the 5 presidents would be so useless. If they had brought more experts with them at that time, things would not have been so bad. Although the skeleton is very scary, as long as we had stopped Di Beichen's actions before, so many things would not have happened later. Failed at the last step, Jun Hongqing could not help but regret the moment he thought of the situation that day. If he had known that this would be the result, he would never have done that. No matter what, we'll think of another way when the time comes. If the secret key can be exchanged for a chance of survival, that would be the best. Xiao Yanlong's expression was complicated. Faintly, he felt that the possibility of Di Yujue agreeing was very small. However, the land of heritage was still very important to the Di family. Until that moment, no one would know what the result would be. Jun Hongqing nodded slightly. This was the only thing they could do now. After Xiao Yanlong promised to lead the family's disciples to the Jun family tomorrow, Jun Hongqing was completely relieved. In this kind of isolated and helpless situation, as long as they were not fighting alone, at least they would have more confidence. After seeing Jun Hongqing leave, Xiao Sudong walked to Xiao Yanlong's side. Father, should I inform the elders to make preparations? Xiao Sudong's expression was complicated. In just a few days, he felt that his thoughts were completely different from before. This was because he realized that the family that he had always felt was incomparably strong could now disappear at any time. This feeling made him feel very panicked. Ever since he was a child, he had never thought that something like this would happen to him. Now, as the distance between him and Di Beichun got closer and closer, he realized that the gap between him and Di Beichun was so big. Whether it was Di Beichun Bailey Hongzhuang or his sister, they were all much more than he was. When they encountered such a situation, they would at least have their own opinions. But now his mind was blank. He did not know what he could do for the family's sakes. The only thing he could do was to listen to his father's orders and do what he could. Xiao Yanlong shook his head. Su Dong, I have a mission for you. Chapter 6184. How can I take everyone away at this time? Xiao Sudong found it hard to believe. Although he knew very well that he couldn't do anything for the Xiao family with his current strength, he had already thought about it. If all of this was destined to come, then he would persevere until the end. Even if he had to pay with his life, as long as he was with everyone, he would not be afraid. However, wasn't what his father wanted him to do now. Xiao Yanlong looked at Xiao Sudong seriously and said, Sudong, you are my only son and also the young master of the Xiao family. Perhaps after this time, the Xiao family will be completely removed from the upper realm, but as long as you are still here, and some of the young cultivators of our family are still here, at least the bloodline of our Xiao family still exists in this world. No, I can't agree. Xiao Sudong shook his head. I want to live and die with you. Looking at the determined Xiao Sudong, the corners of Xiao Yanlong's lips slowly raised into a smile. I know I have never misjudged you. Ever since Soa's talent in the light attribute was discovered, I have been focusing on her cultivation. You are obviously my son, but you have never complained about what I have done. Until now, you still have the heart of a pure child. Xiao Yanlong was somewhat gratified. In the past, he had always felt that Sudong was not capable and could not be independent. Now it seemed that such simple emotions were more difficult for everyone to achieve. Father, I have never minded these things. Xiao Sudong's face was calm. Sister's talent is indeed more outstanding than mine. As long as the family can be good, I don't care about these things at all. Yes, if only I could have understood these things earlier. Xiao Yanlong sighed. If he could have listened to Sudong's thoughts earlier, perhaps they would not have reached this point. Unfortunately, the situation had already become like this, and he did not know if there was still a chance to change it. There was no point in regretting it. Father, I don't want to leave. Sister needs to be protected the most now. Let sister take everyone away. Xiao Sudong said. Your sister will leave. She is pregnant, and the Jun family will not let her stay here. Then isn't it fine? Let sister take everyone away. I want to stay here. Xiao Sudong said seriously. No. Xiao Yanlong's voice was resolute. You must leave. There is no doubt about this. Father, if you don't leave from today onwards, you and I are no longer father and son. Xiao Yanlong's voice was cold and stern. His eyes turned red, revealing anger and pain that he was enduring. Looking at Xiao Yanlong like this, Xiao Sudong's eyes gradually became moist. How could he not understand that his father was doing this for him to survive? But this kind of life was not what he wanted. Sudong, for the entire family, The most important thing is to leave behind the bloodline. It was because he had done something wrong that he brought disaster to his family. As my son, you have an obligation to help me make up for this mistake. Hearing this, Xiao Sudong looked at Xiao Yanlong in a daze. Such words indeed made it impossible for him to refute. After a short while, Xiao Sudong nodded, and his voice was filled with reluctance and forbearance. Father, I'll definitely bring everyone out safely. Chapter 6185. If the Xiao family has the chance to escape this disaster, you can come back. Xiao Yanlong's lips curled into a smile. It was clearly a smile, but Xiao Sudong felt unusually bitter. After settling everything, Xiao Yanlong did not tell anyone, and quietly left the family. The Di family. When Di Yujue heard the news from the cultivators, his expression became very complicated. Yujue, Patriarch Xiao came to look for you at this time. Could it be that they've already noticed our movements? Lin Yinqing's eyes were filled with thoughts. They had been very careful with their movements this time, and hoped that they would not alert the enemy. However, they knew very well that with so many cultivators heading there, it would naturally be a big commotion. It would be very difficult for them not to be noticed. Di Yujue looked out of the house with deep eyes. He looked like he was in a daze. No one knew what he was thinking. He should have guessed my movements long ago. The reason why he came here today is probably to negotiate with me. Di Yujue slowly said. Do you plan to meet him? Lin Yinqing sized up Di Yujue's expression. She knew her husband very well. Usually, as long as it was Di Yujue who made a decision, he would never change it. No matter what Xiao Yanlong said today, it would be useless. Meet him? Why not? Di Yujue chuckled, but there was no smile in his eyes. Since he dares to come here alone, how can I let him come here for nothing? Lin Yinqing did not say anything else when she saw Di Yujue's strange expression. She clearly remembered the scene of Di Yujue and Xiao Yanlong drinking and chatting happily a few years ago. However, no one expected that in just a few years, the relationship between the two parties had deteriorated to such an extent. Now that she recalled the scenes from back then, it felt like a lifetime had passed. Soon Xiao Yanlong's figure appeared in the Di family. When the cultivators of the Di family saw him, they could not help but feel puzzled. Patriarch Xiao? Why is he here today? They might be here to beg for mercy. With the strength of the Xiao clan, they are no match for us. It's useless to beg for mercy now. After doing so many terrible things, it would be too easy if he could be let off just by begging for mercy. Facing Xiao Yanlong, no one had a good expression. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mu Lingbing were passing by. When they noticed Xiao Yanlong's appearance, their expressions changed slightly. Hongzhuang? Isn't that the head of the Xiao family? Mu Lingbing was surprised. According to their plan, they were going to attack the Jun family in 2 days. According to their judgment, the Xiao clan would definitely help when the time came. Therefore, when the time came for them to take action, the two families would have to deal with them together. For Xiao Yanlong to appear here at such a sensitive time, his intentions were indeed worthy of consideration. Xiao Yanlong should also be very clear that once he fights with our clan, he will definitely lose, so he wants to seek peace. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. She understood the tricks of these people very well. Doesn't that mean that he betrayed the Jun family? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. In a life and death situation like this, it's normal for him to make such a decision. Chapter 6186. Noticing Mu Lingbing's expression, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled softly. Her mother had never been a scheming person. Sometimes, it was hard to change one's nature. Even after experiencing so much pain, Mu Lingbing had always maintained her perseverance. If the head of the Di family agrees to Xiao Yanlong's request for peace, then we only need to deal with the Jun family when we fight. If we use this method of taking them down one by one, won't we win faster? Mu Lingbing raised an eyebrow. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Mother, it's rare for you to come up with such an idea. Hearing this, Mu Lingbing was a little embarrassed. I've been listening to the fights between the mixed martial arts families, and I feel that it's impossible not to use some brains. It wasn't easy being the head of the family. Pulling one hair could affect the whole family. Once a wrong decision was made, it could affect the entire family. Actually, this is a good idea. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Although the Xiao family and the Jun family had always been in an alliance, she knew that this so-called alliance wasn't solid enough. Both of them were selfish people who had always been thinking for their own interests. As long as there was a better way out, they would abandon the other without hesitation. Therefore, if they wanted to take them down one by one, it would be very simple. But I don't think father will agree. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. Why? Because father is fundamentally different from them. Inside the room, Di Yujia looked at Xiao Yanlong outside the door, his expression calm. He spread his hands casually. Sit, this is your favorite chrysanthemum tea. A simple and ordinary sentence touched Xiao Yanlong's complicated heart. He still remembered that every time he came, Di Yujia would always prepare his favorite tea. It was the same scene, but the situation was completely different. Xiao Yanlong didn't say anything. He quietly walked to the chair next to Di Yujia and picked up the tea with familiarity. After taking a sip, his expression relaxed. It's still the same taste as before. With just one sentence, the two of them had different feelings in their hearts. I didn't expect you to come to me at this time, Di Yujia said slowly. Actually, I didn't want to come either. Xiao Yanlong chuckled, the curve of his lips revealing a hint of ridicule. But when the family's life and death is at stake, I have no choice but to come. We've known each other for so long. You should know my personality very well. You should also know that my decision will not change. Di Yujia faintly glanced at Xiao Yanlong. After being friends for so many years, they still had this bit of tacit understanding. I know. Xiao Yanlong nodded and slowly put the tea aside. However, I still want to give it a try. In the next moment, Xiao Yanlong turned his head and looked seriously at Di Yujia, saying, Brother Di, we have been friends for so many years. For so many years, we have always supported each other. I know that I have done many wrong things in the past few years. I only hope that you can remember our old friendship and let us live. Di Yujia looked at the urgency on Xiao Yanlong's face and suddenly said, Actually, I also didn't expect that we would end up like this. Our two families have been friends for many years. For so many years, we have always helped and supported each other. Chapter 6187. Xiao Yanlong's expression was serious. During this period of time, I will find a way to make up for the losses caused to the Di family. Make up for it? Di Yujia chuckled. Things have already happened. There's no use in trying to make up for it. Back then, when Beichen broke off the engagement, I also said that I would find a way to make it up to you. But you refused without hesitation, didn't you? His deep eyes were filled with dark clouds. After being brothers for decades, he never thought that there would be a day when they would meet on the battlefield. However, the one who made this decision in the first place was Xiao Yanlong. Xiao Yanlong's voice faltered as he recalled Di Yujia's apologetic expression. Compared to what the Xiao family had done, the Di family's breaking off of the engagement was nothing. Xiao Yanlong opened his mouth, his face a little pale. I know that I was wrong. In fact, I've been regretting it since a long time ago. However, there's no medicine for regret in this world, and I have no way to change all of this. I can only continue to make mistakes step by step, until I've made a terrible mistake in the end. Brother Di, on account of our many years of friendship, can you be magnanimous and let us go? I promise that I'll never do anything to harm the Di family in the future, never. Xiao Yanlong's face was serious. He did not tell anyone today, and had come here alone. No matter what request Di Yujia made, he would find a way to satisfy all of it, as long as they could live. Di Yujia looked calmly at Xiao Yanlong's solemn vow and suddenly said, I'm very sorry that the relationship between our families has become like this, but I can no longer trust you. From the moment you stabbed Beichen and the others, there was no room for negotiation between our two families. He clearly remembered the scene of Junhong Chung and Xiao Yanlong, trying to kill Beichen, and the others that day. If it were not for the fact that these two children had amazing abilities, they might have lost their lives at that time. Xiao Yanlong's expression shook. Thinking about it carefully, he also felt very ashamed. Brother D, I can guarantee that such a thing will never happen again. I can guarantee it with my life. Xiao Yanlong's expression was serious. No matter what you need me to do, I can do it. In fact, your family's biggest enemy over the years has been the Jun family. As long as the Jun family disappears, everything will be resolved. As for what I have done, I will think of a way to make up for it. I will definitely not be your enemy in the future. I can give you all the things in our clan's resource room. Other than that, you can state any conditions you want. I can even give up my position as the Xiao clan's patriarch, as long as you let us live. Xiao Yanlong nervously looked at Di Yujue. He was already at the end of his rope. If Di Yujue did not agree, he was not optimistic about the upcoming battle. He had even thought of disbanding the family and letting everyone escape. However, the family had its dignity. Once he did that, the entire Xiao clan would become a complete joke. Unless they lived in seclusion forever, and no longer used the surname Xiao. Even if the Xiao clan really had the chance to rise in the future, they would not be able to establish themselves in the upper realm. How could he let all the fame that the Xiao clan had built up over the years be ruined just like that? Looking at the anxious Xiao Yanlong, Di Yujue sighed in his heart. Chapter 6188. Perhaps it was because he had been with Jun Hongcheng for a long time, so he didn't even feel the slightest bit ashamed to say such shameless things. There's no need to say any more. I've already decided on this matter. Brother D. Di Yujue raised his hand and stopped Xiao Yanlong's words. Don't call me that. We're no longer brothers. If you really cared about our family's many years of friendship, you wouldn't have attacked Beichen. If the Dark Sacred Assembly hadn't been established successfully this time, you and Jun Hongcheng would have crushed my entire family without hesitation. Do you think you would hesitate? Di Yujue stared at Xiao Yanlong. Before the latter could speak, his voice had already sounded. No, you definitely wouldn't. It's not that I haven't given you a chance. Don't you know that begging for mercy when you're at the end of your rope is the most meaningless? Don't say such useless words. It will only make me look down on you even more. Di Yujue's eyes were cold, and his resolute and fierce appearance no longer had the slightest bit of brotherly love from the past. No matter who it was, as long as they touched his reverse scale, they would die. He wouldn't let his family fall into a dangerous situation because of a plea. If it weren't for the fact that he wasn't decisive enough when dealing with the Jun family, there wouldn't have been so many twists and turns later. Xiao Yanlong stood in place in a daze. He didn't expect that he would get such an answer after throwing away his self-esteem to beg for mercy. A thick sense of humiliation began to linger in his heart. Di Yujue's every word pierced deeply into his heart. Okay, since you've made up your mind, then we can only meet on the battlefield. Xiao Yanlong nodded and put away his previous begging appearance. His expression once again returned to its usual deep state. Between us, there's only meeting on the battlefield. Today, I won't kill you. The next time we meet, you'll die by my hands. Di Yujue stared at Xiao Yanlong, and the scene of them meeting for the first time when they were young flashed in his mind. Now it really felt like a lifetime ago. Xiao Yanlong's body trembled, and his leaving footsteps paused slightly. Then, he took another step and firmly left. The 3-day agreement arrived in the blink of an eye. During these 3 days, the cultivators of the Di family, the Lin family, and the Dark Sacred Congregation were all rushing to the Jun family's residence. It was only on the last day that Di Beichen and the others left with Di Yujue and the others. Beichen, I heard that the cultivators of the Jun family seemed to have realized what was going to happen. That's why the Xiao family has been sending cultivators to meet up with them. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. The cultivators of the Dark Sacred Assembly were all over the upper realm. Now they were very well informed. Di Beichen nodded slightly. Xiao Yanlong came to see father first. Although I don't know what they talked about, Xiao Yanlong should have already known about this at that time. So today's battle will be an all-out attack from both sides. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly. She had never been to the Jun family before. She didn't expect to see such a scene on her first visit. Today rivers of blood were destined to flow. The eyes of everyone present shone with a dazzling light. After so many years of enduring, they were finally going to have a good fight. In order to remove the Jun family from the upper realm, they had been preparing for too long. After the Bailey family learned about this situation, they also came. Chapter 6189. Jun family. Jun Hongcheng stood at the back of the mountain. A gentle breeze blew, lifting up a corner of his clothes. Xiao Yanlong stood beside him, and both of their faces were indescribably dignified. If I'm not wrong, they should start taking action today. Jun Hongcheng slowly said. Since he became the head of the family, he had always hoped that one day he would be able to kill the D family. But he didn't expect that this scene would actually happen to him. It wasn't the D family that was facing extermination, but them. Xiao Yanlong's expression was complicated. Ever since he talked with Di Yujue, his mood became even more complicated. They had to fight with their backs to the wall. They had no way out. If they couldn't withstand it today, the two families would be completely finished. Let's go down. Everyone is waiting for us. Jun Hongqing nodded slightly. Sei Wu and the others have safely left, right? Don't worry. I have already arranged for them to leave. The place they found is very hidden. As long as they live in anonymity, they shouldn't be discovered. Xiao Yanlong's expression had a trace of gentleness. As long as Su Dong and the others were safe and sound, it could be considered as settling one of their worries. After Di Beichen and the others arrived, the cultivators who had arrived earlier rushed out and joined the team. In the blink of an eye, the team continued to expand, and finally, the momentum of an army was monstrous. After the cultivators of Junyang City saw the Di family and the Lin family's teams gather, their faces were filled with fear. I said that there were too many cultivators here in the past 2 days. I didn't understand at first, but now it seems that the Di family is preparing to attack the Jun family. A cultivator couldn't help but exclaim. The hatred between the two families had lasted for too many years, and everyone had almost become accustomed to it. However, no one thought that there would be such a day. My God, then won't a war break out in the Jun family today? Perhaps after today, the Jun family will no longer exist? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. This sudden situation was too terrifying. No one had expected such a thing to happen. This unexpected feeling made their hearts tremble. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. Some cultivators had already started contacting their families. Based on this situation, they would not rest until one of them was dead. In order to avoid being implicated, it would be safer for them to leave Junyang City as soon as possible. Otherwise, once they were affected by the flames of war between the two families, they wouldn't even have a place to cry. Di Yujue looked at the group of cultivators behind him. His dignified and handsome face was unprecedentedly serious. He stared at the familiar faces in front of him and spoke clearly into everyone's ears. The Jun family has been plotting against us all these years. I don't know how many cultivators have died in their schemes. For the sake of avenging the fallen cultivators, and for the sake of preventing the future descendants of the clan from having to face this kind of trouble, we must completely remove this malignant tumor today. Di Yujue's words were very simple, without any unnecessary embellishments. But it was these simple words that shocked everyone, and the blood in their bodies was instantly ignited. They knew very well how uncomfortable it was to be on guard all these years. As long as they could completely solve this problem, everything would be worth it. Remove this malignant tumor. Destroy the Jun family. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.